Chapter 1430 Killing Teng Lingzi. Chapter 1430, Killing Teng Lingzi. Crack, crack, crack. A jarring sound rang in Teng Lingzi's ears, as though something had split apart. His eyes widened as he turned around slowly, looking at the blood gourd in his palm in disbelief. His pupils constricted as he gasped. To his horror, he realized that cracks were appearing on this destiny Dharmic weapon that coexisted with him. Although they were thin, they were clear. Furthermore, those fine cracks were extending at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, the entire blood gourd was filled. This. Teng Lingzi panicked and shrieked with a quivering voice, "That's impossible. How can my destiny Dharmic weapon shatter? Desolate Martial is merely made of flesh and blood. How is this possible?" Teng Lingzi was wrong about one thing. Right now, Su Zimo could no longer be considered as a body of flesh and blood. He was a complete Grade 7 Creation Green Lotus. The Creation Green Lotus was born in chaos and stole the creation of heaven and earth. It was eternal and flawless with immense vitality. Even the Bloodline race of the primordial 9 races could not refine the Creation Green Lotus. Snap. Another strange sound rang in Teng Lingzi's ears. His gaze froze. A gigantic crack had already appeared on the blood gourd. Through the crack, streaks of green light even burst forth in a bedazzling manner. Boom. There was a deafening bang. The blood gourd exploded and a gigantic green lotus soared into the skies from 7 Kills Peak. It shone brightly and exuded a powerful might as it looked down on all living beings. The blood gourd exploded and Teng Lingzi's entire arm was ruptured. Flesh splattered everywhere as fresh blood spewed. Ah! Teng Lingzi shrieked tragically and was sent flying. His face was pale as he spat out a huge mouthful of blood with a dispirited expression. It was nothing much for his arm to be snapped. At most, he could regrow it after expending some Dharmic powers. However, most of the Bloodline race's cultivation was on the blood gourd. Now that his destiny Dharmic weapon was destroyed, it was equivalent to reducing more than half of his cultivation and combat strength. It was over. His future cultivation, past glory and current status were all crippled. Countless clansmen of the Bloodline race coveted the position of the young master. Now that his destiny Dharmic weapon was shattered and his cultivation was crippled, he was no longer qualified to be the young master of the Bloodline race. This was a huge blow for him. The commotion attracted countless gazes. Many mighty figures of the Bloodline race looked at the Creation Green Lotus on 7 Kills Peak with shocked expressions and wary gazes. After all, the Bloodline race was a type of flora. Although it was extremely domineering, it was inferior in the face of a powerful life form like the Creation Green Lotus. The Creation Green Lotus dared to and could even snatch the creation of heaven and earth. What was a mere Bloodline race compared to it? "What are you guys waiting for?" Teng Lingzi roared, "Kill him. He's Desolate Martial." Many mighty figures of the Bloodline race reacted and moved one after another, charging towards 7 Kills Peak. "Teng Lingzi, you've trapped my senior brother for 10 years and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of cultivators. Today I'll have you pay with your life." Su Zimo's voice sounded chilling to the bones. "How dare you?" Right then, a holler sounded from 7 Kills Peak. A shuddering aura burst forth and descended on the Creation Green Lotus, wanting to suppress it. A half-martial ancestor. The birth of the Creation Green Lotus had finally alarmed the Bloodline half-martial ancestor. Actually, prior to this, the Bloodline half-martial ancestor had already noticed Su Zimo. However, the moment the battle began, Su Zimo was put into the blood gourd by Teng Lingzi and suppressed. There was naturally no need for the Bloodline half-martial ancestor to appear. But now the situation was different. Although Teng Lingzi was severely injured, right now he was still the young master of the Bloodline race. There was no way the Bloodline half-martial ancestor would let Su Zimo kill the young master right under his nose. Boom, 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 boom. Apart from 7 Kills Peak, the other 5 main peaks released powerful auras one after another as well. There were 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors guarding the 6 Stars Mountain. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Actually, if it was just 1 or 2 Bloodline half-martial ancestors, Su Zimo was confident that he could fight them with his transformed Green Lotus true body and many powerful trump cards. In fact, he could even suppress them. However, against 6 half-martial ancestors, 50 conjoined body mighty figures and thousands of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords and Void Reversions, it would be difficult. The only way was if his Dragon Phoenix true body descended. This did not mean that the Dragon Phoenix true body was much stronger than the current Green Lotus true body. Instead, it was the many secret skills of the Dragon Phoenix true body that countered the Bloodvine race the most. Be it the Dragon Phoenix Flame or Baron, they were extremely lethal to the Bloodvine race. In a flash, Su Zimo judged the situation. It was definitely a fool's dream to think that he would be able to kill all the Bloodvine races with his Green Lotus true body today. If he could escape with Ming Zhen and the Southern Duel sect cultivators from this place, it would already be extremely fortunate. However, no matter what, Teng Lingzi had to die. He was the greatest sinner. The spirit consciousness pressure of the 6 half-martial ancestors descended, wanting to suppress the creation Green Lotus. The half-martial ancestors of the other 5 peaks had already appeared and were heading over. As for the half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak, he was already on the mountain peak. Ha 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 ha. When he saw that, Teng Lingzi burst into laughter and shouted with a tragic expression, "Desolate Marshal, even if you cripple my destiny Dharmic weapon, you won't be able to survive. I'll kill you first." Su Zimo activated his bloodline phenomenon and the creation Green Lotus shone brightly, releasing a tremendous power that repelled the spirit consciousness pressure of the 6 half-martial ancestors. "Desolate Marshal, how dare you?" The half-martial ancestor on 7 Kills Peak hollered with a sharp expression. "Even if the Patriarch arrives today, he won't be able to save you." Su Zimo glared at Teng Lingzi coldly and said, "Die." Boom. The creation Green Lotus swayed and the void trembled as cracks extended towards Teng Lingzi. Teng Lingzi's combat strength was diminished and he could not dodge at all. He knew that he was going to die and a vicious glint flashed through his eyes. With a deranged expression, he took out a blood-colored badge from his storage bag and tossed it towards Su Zimo, the killing badge of the Bloodvine race. This killing badge was not a powerful Dharmic weapon. The lotus leaves of the creation Green Lotus slashed gently and sliced the killing badge into 2. However, at the same time the killing badge released a strange power that descended on Su Zimo. Su Zimo wanted to check carefully but the power suddenly vanished. It was as though he was merely imagining things earlier on. Furthermore, he did not sense anything amiss with his body. "Desolate Marshal, you can't escape. You'll have to be hunted down by the Bloodvine race for all eternity." Ah, ah. Teng Lingzi's tragic laughter sounded. The power of the creation Green Lotus descended. Boom. There was a loud bang. Right in front of everyone, Teng Lingzi exploded like the blood gourd earlier on and a blood mist spewed, dyeing the peak red. His essence spirit could not even escape and turned into nothingness. The young master of the Bloodvine race was dead. Chapter 1431 Hidden Expert. Chapter 1431 Hidden Expert. "I'm going to tear you to pieces and turn your bones to ashes." When he saw that, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak said with a cold voice and a grim expression. Su Zimo could not hold on any longer either after he released that attack. He reverted to his human form and descended from midair, panting slightly with sweat on his forehead. This time round he was fighting against the spirit consciousness pressure of 6 half-martial ancestors. After all, he had just entered the conjoined body realm. Such a toll on an early-stage conjoined body mighty figure was way too great. Ever since Su Zimo entered 6 Stars Mountain and released the Kachirati Dao fire, his essence spirit had expended immensely after forcefully killing Teng Lingzi while going against 6 half-martial ancestors. If not for the fact that the Creation Lotus platform was nourishing his essence spirit continuously, he would not have been able to withstand such an immense toll. When he saw the 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race approaching, Su Zimo made a decision. This was not a place where he should linger. If he continued fighting with the Bloodvine race, there was a high chance he would die here. Once he left this place and recovered his energy, he could make a comeback. Furthermore, even though he could not sense anything unusual about the killing badge released by Teng Lingzi before his death, there was indeed something strange about it. There was a high chance that the killing badge was a latent danger that could burst forth at any moment. 50 mighty figures had already arrived. The half-martial ancestors of the other 5 peaks descended on 7 Kills Peak as well. 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures surrounded 7 Kills Peak so tightly that even mosquitoes could not fly out, let alone a living person. With a calm expression, Su Zimo slapped his storage bag and took out a crumpled beast hide that was etched with mysterious formation patterns. A teleportation formation from the primordial era. Once activated, it could teleport Su Zimo millions of kilometers away. Of course, the teleportation formation was incomplete and its location could not be fixed. It was extremely random. Su Zimo was prepared to send Ming Zhen away first. He would defend here for a moment before looking for an opportunity to teleport away with everyone from Southern Duel sect. As long as Ming Zhen could leave this place, given his cultivation realm, the inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and the Green Lantern, he would definitely be able to recover. At that moment, Su Zimo was supporting Ming Zhen and could clearly sense that the latter's aura had turned unstable. It was a sign that he was about to break through. Initially, Ming Zhen was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. However, in order to save everyone from Southern Duel sect, he came alone and was suppressed by Teng Ling in the Blood Gourd for an entire 10 years. For the past 10 years, Ming Zhen had been resisting the Blood Gourd constantly. The moment he relaxed slightly, he would be melted into a puddle of blood. As long as he could not defend against it, he would die. No pressure could compare to this situation. Under that immense pressure, now that Ming Zhen broke free, the suffering he endured for the past 10 years became the source of energy for his breakthrough. Furthermore, Ming Zhen's trip carried the benevolence and boldness of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. If nothing went wrong, he would definitely advance to the conjoint body realm. With that, Su Zimo had to teleport Ming Zhen away first. This is bad. Desolate Marshal is escaping. Hurry, seal the space. It's too late. When the Bloodvine half-martial ancestors saw Su Zimo take out the beast hide, they vaguely realized something. However, by the time they reacted, Su Zimo had already activated the teleportation formation on the beast hide. The beast hide shone brightly and emanated a mysterious energy fluctuation. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed. The incomplete teleportation formation on the beast hide was completely activated and rich Dharmic powers lingered around it. However, it seemed like it was met with a powerful obstacle and could not be condensed. Su Zimo had experienced such a phenomenon before. Back in Heaven and Earth Valley, in order to kill him, the experts of the primordial races captured Night Spirit and set up an impenetrable trap, even sealing the space in advance. Later on, if Monk Daming had not attacked secretly, this Green Lotus True Body, Dragon True Body and even Night Spirit would have died in Heaven and Earth Valley. But now the space around Six Stars Mountain was sealed as well. Su Zimo had suffered such a huge loss before. Therefore, when he first arrived at Six Stars Mountain, he had already scanned in advance and checked that the surrounding space was not locked. In other words, someone had made use of this short period of time to seal the surrounding space from the moment he killed his way into Six Stars Mountain until now. This was the first time that the situation had spiraled out of Su Zimo's control. Given his capabilities, he could definitely locate the spatial nodes and dispel the spatial seal with sufficient time. However, given the current situation, there was no way the Bloodvine half-martial ancestors and mighty figures would give him the time and opportunity. Since he could not escape, he could only fight head-on. Everyone, you sure are capable. Gritting his teeth, Su Zimo said coldly and put away the beast hide once more. The 6 half-martial ancestors exchanged glances as shock and confusion flashed through their eyes. It was as though the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors did not know who sealed the space here either. Could it not be the 6 of them? Su Zimo frowned and looked at the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race in the surroundings. Could some mighty figure of the Bloodvine race have predicted his move and sealed the space in advance? That was not impossible. After all, in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, he escaped using the teleportation formation on this beast hide. It was only logical for someone to think of this move beforehand. However, Su Zimo merely swept his gaze across the crowd vaguely. None of the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race stood out with smug expressions. Su Zimo's heart sank. Could it be that the 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures were not the ones who sealed the space of Six Stars Mountain? Was it someone else? If that was truly the case, it would be terrifying. This meant that there was another expert hiding on Six Stars Mountain that even managed to hide from his senses. Furthermore, this expert had predicted his methods beforehand and attacked secretly, cutting off his retreat route and sealing off all possibilities. Su Zimo felt chills run down his spine. This was a truly strong enemy. He controlled everything without even showing himself. Could there be a Mahayana patriarch of the Bloodvine race hidden on Six Stars Mountain? Impossible. Su Zimo quickly denied that speculation. If a Mahayana patriarch was here, he would have been suppressed with a single finger instead of watching Su Zimo kill the young master of the Bloodvine race. Who could it be? As Su Zimo's imagination was running wild, the 6 half-martial ancestors and 50 mighty figures of the Bloodline race relaxed. Although they did not know who sealed the space here, it was not a bad thing. At the very least, it severed Desolate Marshal's escape route. Ha 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 ha. A Bloodline half-martial ancestor could not help but laugh. Desolate Marshal, oh Desolate Marshal. Even after all your scheming, you're still a step away. Desolate Marshal, this is a destined calamity in your life. Even if you have wings, you won't be able to escape today. Chapter 1432, Hanging by a Thread. Chapter 1432, Hanging by a Thread. Junior brother, put me down. Don't worry about me. Ming Zhen realized that the situation was dangerous and said softly. Su Zimo obeyed and placed Ming Zhen carefully not far away. At that moment, Ming Zhen was withered and emaciated after being refined by Teng Lingzi for 10 years. Seated in a lotus position, he was like a skeleton that would fall apart with a single gust of wind. Junior brother, don't worry and fight. Ming Zhen closed his eyes after saying that. 7 kills peak. Su Zimo surveyed the experts of the Bloodline race fearlessly and shouted with a burning gaze, "Come, let me see what your half-martial ancestors can do." Brazen Ant. A Bloodline mighty figure cursed and threw out the blood gourd in his hands. It spun and smashed towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo sneered and closed his sword finger, slashing gently in the direction of the Bloodline mighty figure. Chi. A white sword chi burst forth with a blinding brilliance that seemed like it could rip the void into two. Although the blood gourd was the destiny Dharmic weapon of the Bloodline mighty figure, it could not defend against the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi. It was cut into two by a single slash. The remnant might of the sword chi did not stop. Under the horrified gaze of the Bloodline mighty figure, it turned into a cold light and entered the person's glabella. Even patriarchs would not be able to survive if the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi entered their consciousness, let alone mighty figures. A bloody scar appeared on the glabella of the Bloodline mighty figure. His expression was dim and his eyes were listless. His head tilted and he fell from midair, already dead. The Bloodline mighty figures were in an uproar. Even the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors frowned. To think that you would obtain a sword art passed down from the upper world. The Bloodline half-martial ancestor of 7 kills peak said coldly. Stop wasting our breath on him and join forces to kill him lest he creates trouble for us. The Bloodline half-ancestor that walked out of heavenly residence peak said and attacked right away. A gust with a nauseating stench and a rain of blood descended. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors attacked at almost the same time and released their secret skills. When released by half-martial ancestors, Blood Storm was even more sinister and vile. 6 gusts of foul wind gathered around Su Zimo. The filthy blood rain splattered on Su Zimo's body. Channeling his bloodline, Su Zimo's body shone with a resplendent glow. He created the immovable foundation seal with hand seals and chanted Sanskrit to defend against the secret skills. Earlier on, when he broke through Teng Lingzi's blood gourd, he had already released his bloodline phenomenon. At that moment, without the support of his bloodline phenomenon, Su Zimo was struggling to defend against the power of the 6 half-martial ancestors. The other dozens of Bloodline mighty figures reverted to their true forms and took root as well. Thousands of blood-colored vines extended and coiled towards Su Zimo. The blood vines bared their sharp fangs. All of them wanted to rip off a piece of Su Zimo's flesh. Su Zimo had a green lotus true body and his flesh was a great tonic for them. If they could bite off a piece of flesh, they might even be able to break through. If there were only 50 Bloodline mighty figures, they would not be a threat to Su Zimo. However, at that moment, against the attacks of 6 half-martial ancestors, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness and Dharmic powers were greatly restricted and suppressed. Right now, the thousands of blood vines coiled over and almost sealed all of Su Zimo's space. The combat strength of every single Bloodline mighty figure was equivalent to a grand demon. This was equivalent to thousands of grand demons ganging up on Su Zimo. Furthermore, those blood vines were much more bloodthirsty than grand demons. Sandstorm. Avicii. Sea Burial Secret Skill. Mighty Heavenly Dragon Transcendence. Su Zimo channeled his Dharmic powers to their limits and released Dharmic arts one after another with the nourishment provided to his essence spirit by the creation Green Lotus to fight against the experts of the Bloodline race. In truth, if Su Zimo was alone, he would not have had to fight so hard for this battle. Given his movement technique, He could definitely kill his way out before the 6 half-martial ancestors and dozens of mighty figures formed an encirclement. He could make use of his movement technique to maneuver the experts of the Bloodline race. But now Ming Zhen was by his side. If he left, it would be equivalent to exposing Ming Zhen. Right then, a strange fluctuation came from the mountain peak. Boom. Suddenly, a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic appeared behind Ming Zhen and rose continuously. In the blink of an eye, it grew to a height of 90 feet. Supreme Dharma characteristic. The Dharma characteristic emitted a powerful and sacred Buddhist light and suppressed countless vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts. That was Ming Zhen's Ksitigarbha Dharmic body. At that moment, Ming Zhen was attempting to fuse the Ksitigarbha Dharmic body into his body. Ming Zhen was breaking through. He wanted to break through to the conjoint body realm and fight alongside Su Zimo. Fu. When he saw that, a Bloodline half-martial ancestor sneered, "Even if you break through, you'll just only be at the conjoint body realm. You're still nothing but an ant." Ming Zhen obtained the inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and managed to condense a supreme Dharma characteristic after sitting 10 years in the blood gourd. Anyone who could condense a supreme Dharma characteristic was definitely a monster incarnate. Ming Zhen's future accomplishments were limitless as well. However, the Bloodline half-martial ancestor was not wrong. Even if Ming Zhen could advance to the conjoint body realm, it would not affect the entire situation much. Su Zimo's Green Lotus true body fused with 3 supreme Dharma characteristics and his combat strength far surpassed Ming Zhen. However, he could not break free and fell into a bitter battle. How could Ming Zhen do anything after fusing with just 1 supreme Dharma characteristic? Bang, bang, bang. The battle was still ongoing. Su Zimo's Green Lotus true body was indeed terrifying. Although he was completely disadvantaged and was tainted by the filthy and extremely evil blood, he was not affected much and his bloodline circulated normally. However, he did not have much Dharmic powers left. Such a battle consumed way too much Dharmic powers. At the end of the day, Su Zimo was only at the early stage conjoint body realm. Even with the nourishment of the creation lotus platform, his essence spirit could not hold out for much longer. As for the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors, they gradually revealed a hint of impatience. Even after attacking for a long time, they had not succeeded. "Kill that little monk." A Bloodline half-martial ancestor said in a deep voice, "Leave desolate martial to us." Although that action seemed simple, it was extremely vicious. Ming Zhen's existence was not a threat to them. However, if a Bloodline mighty figure targeted Ming Zhen, Su Zimo would definitely divert some of his attention to protect the latter. With that, he would not be able to handle both ends and the pressure he would have to endure would increase exponentially. Swash, swash, swash. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors took out their destiny blood gourds. They arrived swiftly above Su Zimo's head with the bottom of the gourd facing up and the mouth facing down. Absorb. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors tapped their fingers gently. The 6 blood gourds released a terrifying suction force. If one could not withstand the suction force of a single blood gourd, they would be sucked into it. However, the burst of 6 blood gourds was equivalent to 6 different forces acting on Su Zimo's body. They were trying to rip his Green Lotus true body apart. Ah! Su Zimo froze on the spot motionlessly and could not help but let out a long howl as he felt an immense pain. It was as though his body was about to be shredded by the 6 different powers. That was no longer a Dharmic art. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors used their divine powers. At the same time, the other dozens of mighty figures of the Bloodline race temporarily abandoned Su Zimo and lunged towards Ming Zhen. Both of them were in danger and their lives were hanging by a thread. Chapter 1433 Vanish? Chapter 1433, Vanish? With his life on the line, Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit fanatically without caring about anything else. He closed his sword fingers with both hands and channeled the heaven-slaying sword art. Tiske, Tiske, Tsk. A series of blinding sword chi burst forth from Su Zimo's body. They were dense and thousands of them slashed towards the 6 half-martial ancestors and dozens of conjoint body mighty figures. A single heaven-slaying sword chi was enough to kill a mighty figure of the Bloodline race. What sort of a scene was that with thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi? The stars in the firmaments were chaotic and more than 10,000 sword chi surged through the world, threatening to slice the void into pieces. Many mighty figures of the Bloodline race were shocked. What they saw was an ocean of sword chi that wanted to devour them without a trace. Even the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors were shocked, let alone them. The heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and severed the suction power of the 6 blood gourds almost instantly. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors hurriedly retrieved their blood gourds and retreated. They channeled Dharmic arts to defend against the incoming heaven-slaying sword chi. Even they had to avoid this sharpness. Clang, clang, clang. The heaven-slaying sword chi struck their blood gourds and the sound of metal clashing echoed with sparks. There were white sword scars on the Dharmic weapons of the half-martial ancestors. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors felt their hearts ache when they saw that. Although their destiny Dharmic weapons did not suffer much damage, it would take more than 10 years for the sword scars on them to recover completely. Poof, poof, poof. In the blink of an eye, half of the thousands of blood-colored vines were severed. Some of the mighty figures of the Bloodline race reacted swiftly and transformed into their human forms right away. They retreated rapidly and fled into the distance. Those with slower reactions were caught by the heaven-slaying sword chi and killed on the spot. In just a few breaths, a mighty figure of the Bloodline race had already died on the spot. Desolate Martial. The 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors winced when they saw that. They channeled their Dharmic powers and released their destiny blood gourds. A large pool of blood poured out of the gourds and formed an evil and filthy blood sea that surged towards the heaven-slaying sword chi. The sword chi ocean collided with the sea of blood. 2 completely different powers were eating one another. The sword chi was sharp and sliced the blood sea into pieces. However, the blood sea surged and returned to normal in the blink of an eye. Dozens of breaths later, the sword chi gradually weakened. Finally, it was drowned in the blood sea released by the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors and dissipated. The battle ended in an extremely tragic manner. The entire 7 Kills Peak was filled with blood. Su Zimo's face was pale and he was drenched in sweat. His essence spirit was already throbbing in pain and he had expended all the power of his essence spirit by releasing the heaven-slaying sword art. It was even worse for the Bloodline race. For the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors that joined forces to neutralize most of the heaven-slaying sword chi, things were still fine for them. However, some of the mighty figures of the Bloodline race reacted slower and were killed on the spot by the heaven-slaying sword chi before they could escape from 7 Kills Peak in human form. Of the initial 50 mighty figures, there were only 31 left. Furthermore, among them, some were injured and were still in shock. Desolate Martial, well done. The Bloodline half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak said slowly, ever since the ancient war there has never been another foreign race that could kill so many of our Bloodline race. You're the first. Even crushing your corpse into pieces and burning your bones into ashes won't be able to resolve the hatred in my heart and your sins. Another Bloodline half-martial ancestor hollered as well. The Bloodline half-martial ancestor of Heavenly Residence Peak said coldly, in my opinion, we should restrain his essence spirit and torture it day and night with the most cruel punishment. His body must be suppressed as well and he must not undergo reincarnation for all eternity. Suppress for all eternity without reincarnation. That was the most vicious punishment for a cultivator. Su Zimo's expression was cold and he said nothing. He was not afraid of those threats about being suppressed without being able to reincarnate. The Green Lotus true body was like a clone. He had 2 other true bodies. Once the Martial Dao Prime body and Dragon Phoenix true body grew, the Bloodline race would have to pay the price. However, Su Zimo still felt extremely guilty. After all, he failed to rescue those Southern Dual Sect cultivators from their misery and he could not protect Mingjin either. Right then, a commotion broke out from the Bloodline race. Elder Tsangshi, something doesn't seem right. A mighty figure of the Bloodline race pointed in Su Zimo's direction and said to the Bloodline half-martial ancestor of 7 Kills Peak with a bewildered expression. What is it? Make yourself clear. Elder Tsangshi glanced at Su Zimo and could not help but frown as he hollered when he did not notice anything unusual. That little monk is gone. The mighty figure of the Bloodline race was puzzled and stuttered. Ah, he's indeed gone. How could this be? The other mighty figures of the Bloodline race noticed this as well. Elder Tsangshi and the other Bloodline half-martial ancestors narrowed their gazes and their expressions changed slightly. True enough. The little monk that was initially in a lotus position beside Su Zimo on 7 Kills Peak had vanished. The 6 half-martial ancestors immediately released their spirit consciousnesses and searched every single corner of 7 Kills Peak carefully, but they could not find Ming Zhen. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. How was that possible? A living person like that was gone right under their noses? Desolate Marshal, where did you hide that little monk? Elder Tsang, she asked sternly. At that moment, Su Zimo was shocked as well. Everyone from the Bloodline race thought that Ming Zhen was hidden by him, but he did not know what happened at all. He released 10,000 heaven-slaying sword chi and fought against the experts of the Bloodline race. He did not have the energy to hide Ming Zhen at all. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. Elder Tsang, she sneered, the space here is already sealed. That little monk is definitely still on 6 Stars Mountain. I don't believe that we can't find a living person. Search. Elder Tsang, she's expression was cold as he waved his hand and ordered. At the side, a Bloodline race being stood on the spot and looked into the distance with widened eyes, motionless as though he had seen something unbelievable. What are you waiting for? Hurry and search. Elder Tsang, she questioned. Elder, something isn't right. The mighty figure of the Bloodline race pointed into the distance and rubbed his eyes, stammering, why are the 10,000 food over there gone as well? Su Zimo swept his gaze and could not help but feel shocked. Ming Zhen's inexplicable disappearance had already puzzled him. This scene was even more shocking. The 10,000 Southern Duel sect cultivators that were initially locked up vanished into thin air as well. What was going on here? Could someone have shifted Ming Zhen and the 10,000 Southern Duel sect away while he was fighting against the Bloodline experts? What sort of methods could teleport so many living beings right under the noses of him and the Bloodline mighty figures and half-martial ancestors? Ming Zhen was right beside him. However, he sensed nothing the entire time. Even the Bloodline race was shocked, let alone Su Zimo. I refuse to believe this. Elder Tsang, she's expression darkened as he said slowly, how can so many people vanish into thin air in such a short period of time? Search. There's no need. Right then a voice sounded. It was gentle and calm like Sanskrit, sounding like a spring breeze. Chapter 1434, Terrifying Methods. Chapter 1434, Terrifying Methods. A figure walked over from not far away, wearing grayish-white robes with shoulder-length hair. His long hair covered most of his face, revealing only one eye. That eye was clear and bright, as though it possessed supreme wisdom. A gentle breeze blew and that person's long hair swayed slightly, revealing a thin blood scar on his glabella. It's him? Su Zimo was shocked when he saw who it was. He had never expected that person to appear here. Monk Daming. Back then, after the farewell at the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo had not seen this person again. However, in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, there was a high chance that Monk Daming was the one who helped him in secret. Although Monk Daming did not appear, he was the final beneficiary of that battle and all of Heavenly Secrets' plans were paving the road for him. Be it the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple or Heaven and Earth Valley setup, everything displayed Monk Daming's immense wisdom and planning. Even Su Zimo was impressed by his control and judgment of situations. He schemed against all the experts of the world in Heaven and Earth Valley and the primordial races were no exception. Strictly speaking, even Su Zimo's 2 true bodies, Night Spirit included, were merely chess pieces in Monk Daming's trap. No one could escape from his trap. If the disappearance of Ming Zhen and everyone from Southern Duel sect was the work of Monk Daming, it would no longer be surprising. Back when Monk Daming was at the Dharma characteristic realm, he cultivated 4 unprecedented supreme Dharma characteristics. Even Su Zimo was inferior to him. Although the Green Lotus True Body condensed 3 supreme Dharma characteristics and could even fuse them to reach a height of 99 feet, it was still unknown who was stronger when compared to the 4 supreme Dharma characteristics. A few years ago, Monk Daming was only at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Now that they met again, Monk Daming was already at the perfected conjoint body realm. Su Zimo's cultivation speed was already extremely terrifying. However, it was still slightly inferior compared to Monk Daming. It was clear that Monk Daming had benefited way too much in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. After absorbing the blood of so many experts and even the bloodline of the primordial races, Monk Daming's cultivation would definitely advance in a short period of time. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo exchanged blows with Monk Daming briefly. He suffered a complete defeat. Now, Su Zimo had obtained many great opportunities and even his Green Lotus True Body underwent a complete transformation and grew into a Grade 7 creation Green Lotus. However, when he met Monk Daming again, Suzimo could still sense that he was unfathomable. Even in his peak condition, he did not have much confidence against Monk Daming. Most importantly, Monk Daming still suppressed him in terms of cultivation realm. What is he doing here? He saved everyone from Southern Duel Sect and Mingzhen. Was he the one who created the spatial seal of 6 Stars Mountain? Why did he seal the space? When he saw Monk Daming, many questions filled Suzimo's mind. Who are you? When he saw who it was, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor, Elder Zhangxi frowned slightly and narrowed his eyes as he asked slowly. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor of Heavenly Residence Peak sneered, "Why? A conjoint body mighty figure like you wants to come and die? No way." A mighty figure of the Bloodvine race was pent up and could not help but say coldly, "I can't kill Desolate Marshal, but you think I can't kill you?" Before his sentence was finished, the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race attacked all of a sudden. Blood vines burst forth from his body and coiled towards Monk Daming. Monk Daming had a calm expression and a warm gaze. He reached out and grabbed the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race through the void. The mighty figure of the Bloodvine race froze on the spot motionlessly, as though he was restrained by some power. Thereafter, under many gazes, the mighty figure of the Bloodvine race's body exploded instantly and his flesh splattered everywhere. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died. One move. Monk Daming attacked and destroyed the essence spirit of a mighty figure of the Bloodvine race without even touching the latter's body. Many mighty figures of the Bloodvine race were shocked and hurriedly summoned their destiny Dharmic weapons. They conjured talismans and were on guard. Even the expressions of Elder Zhangxi and the other 5 half-martial ancestors changed. Given the capabilities of a half-martial ancestor, he could naturally kill mighty figures with ease. However, although this person was only a conjoint body mighty figure, wasn't he having a way too easy time killing someone of the same cultivation realm? Suzimo shook his head with a mocking expression. That mighty figure of the Bloodvine race did not know what was good for him and actually challenged Monk Daming. Even he could not claim victory against Monk Daming, let alone others. Who are you? Elder Zhangxi hollered, Desolate Marshal already has a killing badge of the Bloodvine race. If you don't leave, the Bloodvine race will definitely fight you to the death. If you guys die, who will know that it was me? Monk Daming asked indifferently. Haha. Elder Zhangxi burst into laughter as though he had heard the greatest joke in the world. What? You want to kill all of us here? Apart from the 6 of us half-martial ancestors and more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures, there are thousands of void reversions and Dharma characteristic Tao lords of the Bloodvine race here. How many of us can you kill? Since I want to attack, all of you will naturally have to die. Monk Daming's tone was calm and gentle, as though he was recounting a fact. However, every single word he said carried killing intent. To someone like you? Another Bloodvine half-martial ancestor sneered. Even Suzimo was skeptical about Monk Daming wanting to kill all the Bloodvine race beings here. There were thousands of Bloodvine race beings here, but Monk Daming was alone. Even if his combat strength was torrential, he might not be able to wipe out all the Bloodvine race beings. Furthermore, if the Bloodvine half-martial ancestors saw that the situation was amiss and fled in different directions with all their might, Monk Daming would not be able to catch all of them. Right then, Monk Daming smiled as well. Otherwise, why do you guys think that I sealed the space here? Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. The spatial seal was indeed done by Monk Daming. However, the spatial seal was not done to target him. Monk Daming did it to kill all the Bloodvine race beings here. Such methods. Such boldness. The more Suzimo thought about it, the more he realized how terrifying Monk Daming was. At that moment, Elder Zhangxi gradually calmed down as well. He also realized that although the cultivator before him was a conjoint body mighty figure, he was troublesome to deal with. The spatial seal meant that they could not even send a message. Good. Elder Zhangxi nodded repeatedly. To think that apart from Desolate Marshal, the human race has someone like you. Let's see what you can do. As you wish. Monk Daming strode forward and extended his palm. With a backhand slap, he descended from the skies and suppressed Elder Zhangxi. His entire palm shone with a layer of golden light that was blinding. Dong. At the same time, Monk Daming's heart thumped. It was as though someone was beating the heavenly drums. It was deep and powerful, causing the world to tremble for a moment. Thereafter, the sound of a tsunami echoed through the entire 6 Stars Mountain. Chapter 1435, Southern Duel 6 Stars Formation. Chapter 1435, Southern Duel 6 Stars Formation. It was no surprise that Monk Daming could cultivate to the Tsunami Blood Realm. What truly surprised Su Zimo was that the technique released by Monk Daming right now was Diamond Monastery's secret skill, the Diamond Sutra. Legend has it that when cultivated to the peak of the Diamond Sutra, one could condense a diamond heart. The beating of the heart was like the beating of a divine drum and the world would tremble for it. With the beating of his heart, his blood chi surged and the power he released was extremely ferocious. It could subdue all demons and suppress everything. Elder Tsangxi's heart skipped a beat. The attack of the white-robed man was way too terrifying and even he could not defend against the surging power. Without hesitation, Elder Tsangxi reverted to his true form and took root. The other 5 half-martial ancestors reverted to their true forms as well. 6 half-martial ancestors attacked at the same time and hundreds of incomparably thick blood vines tore through the air and coiled towards Monk Daming's descending palm. Softness countered hardness. Although the power released by Monk Daming was strong, the hundreds of blood vines coiled around his arm like an anaconda. In the blink of an eye, Monk Daming was drowned by the hundreds of blood vines. Ha ha ha. A blood vine half-martial ancestor roared in laughter. I was wondering what sort of an impressive figure he was. So he's nothing much. Don't underestimate your opponent and kill with all your might. Elder Tsangxi hollered softly. Hundreds of blood vines constricted continuously, threatening to turn Monk Daming who was inside into sludge. Suddenly, the expressions of Elder Tsangxi and the others changed. They felt an extremely intense burning pain as though they were not killing a person but a gigantic fireball. Pust. The 6 blood vine half-martial ancestors could not help but release their grasp and retrieve their vines. Monk Daming's figure reappeared and a layer of flames burned on his body, emitting an extremely terrifying temperature. The flames landed on the blood vines of the 6 half-martial ancestors and burned dozens of them into holes. It was a tragic sight. The secret skill of Dipankara Monastery. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The moment Monk Daming attacked, he used 2 top-tier secret skills of the Buddhist monasteries. Monk Daming had once condensed 4 supreme Dharma characteristics of the Buddhist monasteries and it was not surprising for him to have such attainments in Buddhism. Poof, poof. The 6 blood vine half-martial ancestors reacted extremely quickly and severed those vines, spewing filthy and evil blood to extinguish the flames. Absorb. The 6 blood vine half-martial ancestors summoned their destiny Dharmic weapons once more and threw the 6 blood gourds above Monk Daming's head. The mouth of the gourds faced him and released a terrifying suction force. The 6 suction forces wanted to rip Monk Daming into 2. Unyielding, Monk Daming condensed the immovable foundation seal with his hands. His glabella shone and an ancient temple appeared, expanding with the wind. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Countless experts were buried in this ancient temple. However, not many people knew that this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was a destiny Dharmic weapon of a person. The ancient temple was filled with signs of time, ancient and filled with a Buddhist glow, as though it had brought everyone back to the primordial era. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple hovered above Monk Daming's head and instantly isolated the power imbued in him by the 6 blood gourds. The 6 half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapons were in a stalemate with the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It was impossible for the 6 blood gourds to rip the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple apart. However, it was extremely difficult for the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to suppress 6 half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapons as well. When they saw that, Elder Tsangxi and the others attacked once more. At the same time, the 30 mighty figures of the blood vine race in the surroundings attacked one after another. Countless Dharmic arts descended. Instantly, the weather changed and Dharmic powers surged, almost penetrating the spot where Monk Daming stood. Monk Daming had a calm expression as he conjured hand seals with both hands and waved them in midair. Pointing in all directions, he shouted softly, "Formless Dharma." The moment he said that, the descending Dharmic art dissipated into emptiness. Formless Monastery's secret skill. Su Zimo nodded silently. Monk Daming not only knew the top secret skills of the Buddhist monasteries, he had even cultivated them to their limits. 7-floor pagoda. Monk Daming changed his hand seals and a gigantic 7-floor pagoda descended from the skies, emitting a divine and flawless Buddhist light. Sanskrit reverberated endlessly. The Buddhist pagoda seemed to be extremely heavy and suppressed the 6 bloodvine half-martial ancestors with an endless might. Elder Tsang Shi and the others were in their true forms and were rooted to the ground. Unable to move, they could only fight the Dharmic arts head-on. Poof, poof, poof. However, how terrifying was the 7th-floor pagoda? It was the most effective against such evil beings. The descent of the pagoda crushed at least 100 blood vines and flesh splattered everywhere in a tragic manner. As half-martial ancestors, Elder Tsang Shi and the others had boundless Dharmic powers. With a surge, the severed blood vines grew once more. We'll hold him back. Hurry and look for the spatial nodes to dispel the spatial seal here. Elder Tsang Shi had already realized that the situation was bad and hurriedly ordered the remaining conjoint body mighty figures to disperse and search for the spatial nodes. All they had to do was to dispel the spatial seal here. At that time they would gain the upper hand, be it in fighting or sending a message. Trying to escape. Monk Daming shook his head gently. How is that possible? That's all there is to your methods. Elder Tsang Shi sneered, you're dreaming if you think that you can kill us with such capabilities. Monk Daming did not argue. Suddenly he took a mysterious step and chanted while conjuring hand seals repeatedly, releasing Dharmic powers into the 6 main peaks. MMM? Elder Tsang Shi and the others felt their hearts skip a beat and were bewildered. Sensing something, Su Zimo suddenly looked up. 6 gigantic stars appeared in the firmaments and revolved with a mysterious trajectory. That's the Southern Duel 6 stars. Su Zimo murmured softly. The moment he said that, a series of explosions sounded from 6 Stars Mountain. Bang, boom, boom. One after another, terrifying powers burst forth from the 6 main peaks and surged into the skies, connecting to the Southern Duel 6 stars above the firmaments. That's a formation. Su Zimo's attainment in array formations was extremely high to begin with, and he realized right away that Monk Daming was activating an ancient formation. This ancient formation made use of Heavenly Residence Peak, Heavenly Bridge Peak, Heavenly Secrets Peak, Heavenly Assimilation Peak, Heavenly Blessings Peak and 7 Kills Peak to invoke the power of the Southern Duel 6 stars, interweaving to activate the formation. Monk Daming's figure suddenly paused and his eyes lit up like the stars in the skies as he hollered softly, Southern Duel 6 stars formation activate. Starlight fell from the skies one after another. Not only did every single streak of starlight contain the might of heaven and earth, their might was even amplified with the augmentation of the formation. Bang, bang, bang. The starlight fell onto 6 Stars Mountain and created huge pits. Some of the mighty figures of the Bloodvine race could not dodge in time and their bodies were penetrated by the starlight, dying on the spot. Even mighty figures of the Bloodvine race could not defend against the power of starlight, let alone the other void reversions and Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. The starlight was intensifying. There were screams all over 6 Stars Mountain and there were rivers of blood. Chapter 1436, Absorbing Bloodline. Chapter 1436, Absorbing Bloodline. The terrain drew in the stars and the 6 main peaks corresponded to the Southern Duel 6 stars. Alongside the activation of the formation, the power of the Southern Duel 6 stars formation was pushed to its limits. The starlight was intensifying. Initially, Elder Tsang Shi and the other 5 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors could defend against it. However, the formation was fused perfectly with the terrain of 6 Stars Mountain and the stars in the skies circulated continuously, increasing in number. Unless someone could break through the formation forcefully, the Southern Duel 6 stars formation would not stop. Even if things were to drag on, Elder Tsang Shi and the other half-martial ancestors would be exhausted to death. Half an hour later, even Elder Tsang Shi and the other half-martial ancestors felt exhausted and weak. It was even worse for the other Bloodvine race beings. Against the Southern Duel 6 stars formation, there were less than 10 mighty figures of the Bloodvine race left. Of the 1,000-odd Bloodvine race beings, more than half were dead and less than 1,000 were left. They fled everywhere in the circle of 6 Stars Mountain to avoid the starlight. However, the starlight was dense as rain and the space here was sealed. How could they hide? In less than 15 minutes, the remaining Bloodvine mighty figures would be buried on 6 Stars Mountain. When he saw that, Su Zimo felt emotional. Given Monk Daming's combat strength, he might be able to secure victory against 6 half-martial ancestors head-on. However, he chose to use an even more relaxed method. He made use of external forces to kill all the Bloodvine race beings here. In fact, Su Zimo suspected that Monk Daming had already arrived long ago. However, Monk Daming waited for him to fight against everyone from the Bloodvine race before choosing to appear. It was as though everyone was part of his plans. What did Monk Daming do this for? Was he trying to refine the bloodline of the Bloodvine race on Six Stars Mountain? Was it because he was compassionate and wanted to save everyone from Southern Duel sect? Was it for the Ashoka Wood? Were there other motives? Suzimo was not certain. However, no matter what, Monk Daming was on the side of the human race. Even though he veered onto the path of the fiends, he was much stronger than most of the cowardly cultivators. Dipankara Monastery did not dare to provoke the Bloodvine race. However, Monk Daming dared to. Not only did he dare to, he even wanted to kill all the Bloodvine race beings on Six Stars Mountain. On the battlefield. Finally, the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors could not hold on any longer. They reverted to their human forms and fled into the distance, avoiding the starlight. If they were to take root on the ground in their true forms, they would be crushed to death by the endless starlight. When he saw that, Suzimo shook his head gently. It was over. If Elder Tsangshi and the others were to take on human forms, they would die even faster. After taking on human form, although Elder Tsangshi and the others were much more agile in their movement techniques, their combat strength was greatly reduced. They were almost completely helpless against Monk Daming. Furthermore, the space here was already sealed and it was impossible for Elder Tsangshi to dispel the spatial seal within a short period of time. However, if Elder Tsangshi and the others remained in their true forms, they would only be able to hold out for slightly longer at best. That was the terror of Monk Daming. He did not give the Bloodvine race any way out. Monk Daming had a calm expression when he saw Elder Tsangshi and the others take on human forms. In a flash, his speed was shocking and he caught up to a Bloodvine half-martial ancestor in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. Suzimo cultivated many escape techniques such as Boundless Golden Light and so on. By fusing all of them together, he could only barely match Monk Daming's speed. Most likely, only the innate divine power of the Golden Rock comprehended by the Dragon Phoenix true body could surpass Monk Daming. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor had clearly not expected Monk Daming to descend before him so quickly. In his panic he attacked. Blood transformation. The Bloodvine half-martial ancestor hollered and flicked his sharp nails, slicing his wrist and spitting out a stream of essence blood towards Monk Daming. That essence blood contained his extremely deep cultivation. Once any living being was enveloped and he activated his secret skill, he could suck the bloodline of that living being dry. Monk Daming smiled and a strange blood glint flashed through his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and sucked the incoming essence blood. The essence blood surged into Monk Daming's mouth. Not only that, Monk Daming's action caused the wound on the wrist of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor to rupture suddenly. Endless blood gushed forth like a burst dam. Conjoint body mighty figures could even regrow severed limbs. A wound that small could be healed in the blink of an eye. However, Monk Daming's suction caused blood to flow endlessly. In just a few breaths, the face of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor turned incomparably pale and his body withered rapidly. More than half of his essence blood was sucked away by Monk Daming. Suzimo was enlightened when he saw that. He could not help but recall how similar the scene before him was when Monk Daming crawled out of the stone coffin. However, Monk Daming was much stronger than before. The Bloodvine race is extremely bloodthirsty and some Dharmic arts are similar to the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Suzimo lamented internally. However, in terms of bloodline, even a Bloodvine half-martial ancestor won't be able to defend against Monk Daming who cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Suzimo's mind. As though he recalled something, he narrowed his eyes in deep thought. On the battlefield, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor was horrified and his eyes were filled with fear. There was no way he could expect that this person who seemed dignified and well-versed in Buddhism would seemingly turn into a bloodthirsty fiend all of a sudden. More than 10 breaths. The blood chi of this Bloodvine half-martial ancestor deteriorated after it was sucked away by Monk Daming. His aura was weak and he was almost reduced to a skeleton. At that moment, the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor could not even conjure his true form. Swoosh! An essence spirit burst forth and fled into the distance. Monk Daming took a step forward and caught up with a single step. He extended his palm and restrained the person's essence spirit without killing the latter. Thereafter, Monk Daming did not stop and chased after another Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. The speed of the Bloodvine race could not compare to Monk Daming. Furthermore, 6 Stars Mountain was already sealed. Where could the other half-martial ancestors escape to? When the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor saw that he could not escape, he turned around and summoned his Destiny Dharmic weapon as well, charging towards Monk Daming. Monk Daming suddenly reached out and grabbed the blood gourd. He exerted strength in his palm. Snap. The half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapon was crushed by Monk Daming. The essence spirit of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor was implicated and he shuddered as though he was struck by lightning, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The blood glint in Monk Daming's eyes flashed once more. Splash. The bloodline of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor surged uncontrollably and seeped out of his pores, surging towards Monk Daming. It was an extremely terrifying sight. The bloodline of a half-martial ancestor was forcefully absorbed by Monk Daming using a secret skill and his body was ripped off. Chapter 1437, Complete Suppression. Chapter 1437, Complete Suppression. In the blink of an eye, the bloodline of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor was refined and absorbed by Monk Daming as well. Monk Daming's eyes flashed coldly. The head of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor seemed to have been sliced by something extremely sharp and split into two slowly, revealing the essence spirit within. Monk Daming reached out and captured this essence spirit in his palm as well as he continued hunting the other 4 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Monk Daming was definitely not a benevolent person. However, he did not kill the essence spirit of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. There seemed to be a deeper meaning to it. Bang, bang, bang. Elder Tsang Shi and the other 3 half-martial ancestors were attacking wildly, wanting to dispel the spatial seal of 6 Stars Mountain. However, they were unable to locate the spatial nodes. If they wanted to break through it with brute force, it would take them a couple of days at least to do it. Monk Daming flew through the air with one hand behind his back. Holding the essence spirits of 2 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors in his palm, he walked over leisurely. Everyone, we can only fight to the death. Elder Tsang Shi had a terrible expression as he said in a deep voice. The other 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors gulped and nodded as well. They gathered rapidly with grim expressions and glared at Monk Daming fixedly. Fellow Taoist, we don't know you at all. Why are you trying to kill us? Elder Tsang Shi's tone finally softened. You guys didn't know the cultivators here either. Why did you guys have to kill them? Monk Daming asked instead. You're different from them. They're just ants. Elder Tsang Shi continued persuading, you already possess such combat strength at the conjoint body realm. You're definitely worthy of the Bloodvine race's respect. Oh. Monk Daming did not stop in his tracks and said indifferently, however, all of you are ants to me as well. As one of the primordial races, this was probably the first time that the Bloodvine race was viewed as an ant by others. Not many people in this world were qualified to have the guts to say such words. Attack. Suddenly Elder Tsang Shi hollered. After the short exchange, he realized that it was impossible for him to beg this person to let them off. The only way he could escape alive was by fighting with his life. Elder Tsang Shi did not release any Dharmic arts but released an essence spirit secret skill right away. The other 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors had a tacit understanding and attacked at the same time, releasing their essence spirit secret skills. The 4 blood-colored gourds condensed from essence spirit secret skills exited the consciousnesses of the 4 half-martial ancestors and smashed towards Monk Daming. Buzz. Although the essence spirit secret skills from the 4 half-martial ancestors were released silently, the void trembled. Monk Daming did not move at all, as though he was frozen and allowed the 4 spirit consciousness blood gourds to smash into his glabella. We did it. The eyes of the 4 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors lit up and they revealed ecstasy. Monk Daming seemed like he did not manage to react and was struck in the consciousness by the 4 essence spirit secret skills. They did not expect that. Once an essence spirit secret skill enters one's consciousness, it would face the essence spirit directly. Even if he had any essence spirit defensive Dharmic weapon, it would be difficult for him to defend against the essence spirit secret skills of the 4 half-martial ancestors. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth from Monk Daming's glabella. A gentle breeze blew and lifted the hair on his forehead, revealing a thin blood scar on his glabella. At that moment, the streak of blood seemed to have turned redder, as though a blood-colored eye was about to open. Monk Daming was fine. The essence spirit secret skills of the 4 half-martial ancestors entered Monk Daming's glabella, but it was as though they were completely dissipated by the blood scar. Su Zimo was not surprised by that. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, even when his green lotus sword entered Monk Daming's glabella, it returned fruitless. Suddenly, Su Zimo frowned, feeling that he had missed out on something critical. "Why, you're the heavenly Elder Tsang." She pointed at Monk Daming, as though he had discovered something, and his voice trembled with fear. Monk Daming smiled gently and extended his palm, grabbing towards Elder Tsang. She gently threw the void. Poof! Elder Tsang-shi's body seemed to be squeezed by a pair of invisible hands and exploded instantly, turning into a blood mist. His essence spirit was also captured by Monk Daming casually. Monk Daming strode forward and arrived beside the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. He merely raised one of his arms and flipped his palm to suppress the 3 of them. The 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors sensed danger and channeled their essence spirit Dharmic powers like madmen, releasing many talismans, Dharmic arts and Dharmic weapons. This was the final gamble of the half-martial ancestors before their deaths. Monk Daming's body was way too terrifying after fusing 4 supreme Dharma characteristics. Even against the wild attacks of the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors, he had no intention of dodging or retreating. He channeled his bloodline and the sound of a tsunami surged. Monk Daming's aura was also rising rapidly. Before long he broke through a certain critical point. Behind Monk Daming, the phenomenons of the 4 Vajras glared with burning gazes in a terrifying manner. Bloodline phenomenon. The 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors exclaimed. Their Dharmic arts were destroyed instantly in the face of the 4 Vajras. Right then Su Zimo's gaze froze. He could clearly see Monk Daming frowning with a pained expression. The feeling Monk Daming gave him was that he was intelligent, gentle, unfathomable and emotionless. Even if he endured any pain, Monk Daming would probably not reveal it. If that's the case, why would Monk Daming feel pain when he activated his bloodline phenomenon? Suddenly, the 4 Vajras that were just conjured behind Monk Daming fused together and became a new phenomenon. Normally speaking, the fusion of the 4 Vajras should make them even more sacred and dignified. However, at that moment, a bloodied and torrential fiend chi appeared behind Monk Daming. Roar! The figure had blurry features and its appearance could not be seen clearly. It charged at the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors and let out a deafening roar. Monk Daming's eyes were closed and his body trembled slightly, as though he was enduring immense torture. Suddenly, the figure moved and lunged towards the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. In midair, it transformed into a gigantic blood-colored human face and opened its bloodied mouth to devour the 3 of them. The Dharmic weapons in midair were devoured by the gigantic mouth and dimmed in the blink of an eye. They fell from midair and turned into a pile of scrap metal. Ah! The 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors shrieked shrilly. However, it was useless no matter how they resisted. They were still devoured by the blood-colored human face. Brup! Brup! The blood-colored human face swallowed huge mouthfuls of blood. The bodies of the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors withered at a visible speed. Right then, Monk Daming touched his glabella gently and chanted Sanskrit. Suddenly, his eyes opened and they regained their clarity. His bloodline phenomenon and the blood-colored human face gradually faded as well. In that short period of time, the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors had their bloodlines sucked dry, leaving only their skin and bones and horrified essence spirits. Chapter 1438 Soul Searching. Chapter 1438 Soul Searching. Monk Daming went forward and captured the essence spirits of the 3 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors as well. At that moment, the essence spirits of the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were imprisoned by Monk Daming. Monk Daming had an indifferent expression as a transparent ball of light appeared in his palm. The essence spirits of Elder Tsang Shi and the other Bloodvine half-martial ancestors were imprisoned within. Suddenly, Black Fiend Chi appeared on the surface of the ball of light and coiled towards the essence spirits of the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors as though it was sentient. In the blink of an eye, many Black Fiend Chi coiled around the essence spirits of the 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors and restricted them like chains. Soul-searching art. Su Zimo exclaimed. What Monk Daming was releasing right now was the secret skill, soul-searching from the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. In the Tao Inheritance Ground, Su Zimo used that secret skill to obtain the Green Thunder manual in Dao being Zephyr Thunder's memories and fused it to obtain the complete Great Void Spirit refinement section. To think that Monk Daming knew the secret skill of the Fiend sex as well. The more he interacted with Monk Daming, the more he could sense how terrifying this person was. In fact, Su Zimo suspected that there was a high chance Monk Daming was still holding back on his combat strength. What does he want? Is he searching the memories of the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors because there's some secret, or is it because he wants to get his hands on some cultivation techniques? Su Zimo was puzzled. Monk Daming's actions were clearly not a spur-of-the-moment decision. He had planned this long ago. Right from the beginning he had not killed any Bloodline half-martial ancestors just for this moment. The essence spirits of the 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors were withering rapidly. Suddenly, the essence spirit of a Bloodline half-martial ancestor exploded and disintegrated. The soul-searching art had a high chance of failure. If the essence spirit that underwent the soul-searching art resisted continuously and affected the process, it would fail. Before long, Elder Tsangxi's essence spirit exploded as well and he died. 2 Bloodline half-martial ancestor essence spirits died in succession and it was clear that Monk Daming did not obtain anything from their memories. However, his expression was calm and there was no hint of frustration or dejection as he continued to use the soul-searching art. There were no more surprises thereafter. Monk Daming closed his eyes and searched through the memories of the 4 half-martial ancestors for what he needed. 7 kills peak. In that short period of time, Su Zimo's essence spirit and Dharmic powers had recovered significantly. He arrived at the place where Teng Lingzi died and picked up the latter's storage bag under a pile of grisly corpses. Circulating his spirit consciousness, Su Zimo erased the spirit consciousness imprint on the storage bag and opened it. There were many elixirs and Dharmic weapons in the storage bag. In the cultivation world, those were superior grade treasures. However, they did not interest Su Zimo. His body was a grade 7 creation green lotus. What Dharmic weapon could compare to it? Even Teng Lingzi's blood gourd was ruptured by the creation green lotus. Suddenly, Su Zimo focused his gaze on a piece of wood. The piece of wood looked extremely old and was more than 10 feet long. It was as thick as a water barrel and emitted a tremendous amount of life force with a hint of warmth. Furthermore, Su Zimo had an indescribable familiarity towards that piece of wood. Without mistake, this should be the Ashoka wood. The Soraka flower had long fused into his body. Therefore he felt a sense of familiarity when he faced the Ashoka wood. Looking at the large piece of wood, Su Zimo felt emotional and sighed internally. It was because of that piece of wood that Southern Duel sect was destroyed and hundreds of thousands of cultivators were buried here with grievances. Right then Su Zimo sensed something and looked up. Monk Daming had already completed the soul-searching art with a calm expression. Even Su Zimo did not know if Monk Daming obtained what he needed. Nobody knew what Monk Daming was thinking. Nobody knew the plans of Monk Daming either. After the soul-searching art, the essence spirits of 2 Bloodline half-martial ancestors were already dead. As for the other 2 Bloodline half-martial ancestors, their essence spirits were dazed and lost their memories, they were completely dumbfounded. Monk Daming rubbed his hands casually and killed the 2 half-martial ancestor essence spirits before heading towards 7 kills peak. To be fair, Su Zimo did not know whether Monk Daming was now good or evil, Buddhist, fiend, foe or even friend. He could not confirm anything. It was as though good, evil, Buddha, fiend and righteousness had fused perfectly into this person without any bit of awkwardness. Although Monk Daming helped him earlier on, he would not be surprised if Monk Daming suddenly killed him the next moment. Even so, Su Zimo did not leave. He had many questions in his mind, perhaps he could get an answer from Monk Daming. You seem like you have many questions? Right then, Monk Daming stepped foot on 7 kills peak with a wise gaze. As though he could read Su Zimo's mind, he asked with a fake smile. Yes. Su Zimo did not hide anything and asked directly, are you Monk Daming? Everything about Monk Daming's identity was merely Su Zimo's speculation. Therefore he had to confirm this matter first. I was. Monk Daming smiled gently and did not hide anything. That was an acknowledgement. Su Zimo nodded and asked again, in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, an expert hid in the dark. Although he did not appear the entire time, he attacked many times. That was you, right? Yes. Monk Daming smiled. Amazing capabilities. Su Zimo said, All the experts of the world were under your control and you left nothing out. Impressive. After a brief pause, he continued, but no matter what, I only managed to escape thanks to your help. I'm grateful. It's nothing much, it was just a matter of convenience. Monk Daming smiled. It's the same today. I'm here because I have other motives, so I helped you out of convenience. Oh. Su Zimo raised his brow and suddenly asked, if I'm not wrong, you should have arrived here a long time ago, right? Why did you only appear after I fought against the Bloodline race to the end? Of course, that was easy to explain. Monk Daming wanted to wait till he was exhausted from fighting with the Bloodline race before standing out so that he could clean up the mess easily. However, Su Zimo felt that this was not Monk Daming's true thoughts. Monk Daming must have another motive. True enough. Monk Daming went silent for a moment when he heard Su Zimo's question. After a moment he said slowly, I wanted to see if you'll use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in that desperate situation. And if I did? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and asked. I might kill you. Monk Daming replied indifferently. Su Zimo could sense that Monk Daming was not joking. Chapter 1439, Origin of Blood Fiend. Chapter 1439, Origin of Blood Fiend. Why? Su Zimo asked. If he was not wrong, Monk Daming had already cultivated his fiend techniques to a terrifying level and even derived a bloodline phenomenon. In fact, that bloodline phenomenon even surpassed Monk Daming's phenomenon of the Buddhist monasteries. It was indeed quite a ridiculous reason for Monk Daming to trigger his killing intent towards Su Zimo if the latter had used the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Monk Daming remained silent for a moment and did not reply to Su Zimo's question directly. He merely said meaningfully, take it that you've forgotten about that fiend technique. Don't ever use it. That was something that Su Zimo had realized a long time ago even without Monk Daming's reminder. Therefore, ever since he came out of Thousand Demon Valley, the thought of activating the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra even on the brink of death had never crossed his mind. This fiend technique seems to be similar to the cultivation techniques and secret skills of the Bloodline race. Su Zimo recalled a terrifying speculation that circled in his mind earlier on and probed. Monk Daming said, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was created from the cultivation techniques and secret skills of the Bloodvine race to begin with. However, it's much stronger than the cultivation techniques of the Bloodvine race. Although the Bloodvine race is bloodthirsty, they require fresh blood. That's why they reared these cultivators from Southern Duel sect and ensured that fresh blood could be absorbed and refined at any moment. However, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is different. You should know that as well. Su Zimo nodded. The terrifying thing about the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was that it could refine all bloodlines for its own use. Even on the battlefield where countless cultivators died, it could still refine them and turn them into its own power. Su Zimo glared at Monk Daming and asked again, how did Tao Lord Blood Fiend in the past learn the cultivation techniques and secret skills of the Bloodvine race? You should have guessed it given your thoughts, right? Even though Monk Daming revealed a huge secret, his tone was calm. Blood Fiend was half a Bloodvine clansman to begin with. He's a remnant of the Bloodvine race. Indeed. Earlier on, Su Zimo contemplated the possibility that Tao Lord Blood Fiend was related to the Bloodvine race. To think that Tao Lord Blood Fiend was a remnant of the Bloodvine race. Is he still alive? Su Zimo finally asked the greatest question in his mind. Monk Daming lowered his head slightly in silence. I don't know. A long time later, Monk Daming said softly with a conflicted expression, perhaps. He seemed like he did not wish to talk about the matter and changed the topic. Any other questions? Su Zimo knew that given the way Monk Daming acted, even if he continued pressing the issue, he would not be able to get an answer. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo asked, where are the survivors of Southern Duel sect? Monk Daming said, they're fine. Before that, I used the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to take them away from Six Stars Mountain. They should have escaped long ago. Where's Mingzhen? Su Zimo asked again, the little monk beside me. What do you think? Monk Daming asked with a fake smile and a deep gaze. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he blurted, Mingzhen didn't leave at all and is still here. That's right. Monk Daming nodded and waved his sleeves. Suddenly the void around Su Zimo rippled like water. Mingzhen's figure gradually appeared. At that moment, Mingzhen was pursing his lips tightly. He was on the brink of a breakthrough and his scrawny body was drenched in sweat. Amazing capabilities. Su Zimo could not help but praise. Actually, Su Zimo had always been doubtful. It was only logical that Monk Daming could shift everyone from Southern Duel sect away stealthily. After all, he had fought against the Bloodline race back then. Everyone from Southern Duel sect was reared far away and nobody paid attention to them. That was the reason why Monk Daming could take so many living people away from Six Stars Mountain. However, Mingzhen was right by his side, right under the noses of many Bloodline mighty figures and half-martial ancestors. How could Monk Daming take Mingzhen away silently? Now, Su Zimo finally understood. Mingzhen did not leave at all. However, Monk Daming took advantage of the moment when Su Zimo was fighting against the experts of the Bloodline race and released an illusion technique to hide Mingzhen. Su Zimo had witnessed the brilliance of Monk Daming's illusion technique back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, it was still admirable that he was able to deceive so many mighty figures of the Bloodline race in him. Of course, if Su Zimo had not fought against the experts of the Bloodline race, Monk Daming would naturally not have had the chance to attack, let alone hide everything. What's up with the Southern Duel 6 Stars formation? Su Zimo asked. There are 6 Bloodline half-martial ancestors guarding 6 Stars Mountain. Even if your methods are extraordinary, it's impossible for you to infiltrate stealthily and set up such a mysterious and powerful formation without the detection of a Bloodline mighty figure or half-martial ancestor. An array formation had to be drawn preemptively. This was an extremely massive project that consumed the most mental and physical energy. The Southern Duel 6 Stars formation could even kill conjoint body mighty figures with ease. Without a year or so, it would be difficult to set it up. That was also the reason why Su Zimo was puzzled. Southern Duel 6 Stars formation. Monk Daming's eyes were filled with reminiscence as he said slowly with a sad expression. The terrain of Southern Duel sect is unique. The 6 main peaks are born naturally and correspond to the stars in the skies to begin with. 40,000 years ago, the founder master of Southern Duel sect came here and discovered this strange terrain. He then established his sect here. At the mention of Southern Duel sect's founder master, Monk Daming sighed gently. I had a good relationship with him and he invited me over. We were the ones who set up this Southern Duel 6 Stars formation jointly. Unfortunately, when my old friend passed, Southern Duel sect no longer had a successor. Nobody in the sect could activate this formation and it was abandoned. Monk Daming sighed sadly. In that case, this formation was indeed set up by Monk Daming. However, it was set up 40,000 years ago. After 40,000 years, Monk Daming had returned to this old place. However, things had changed and the world had changed. That sadness and loss was something that no one could understand. He was old friends with the founder master of Southern Duel sect. That was probably the same reason why he saved everyone from Southern Duel sect. The Southern Duel 6 Stars formation has no formation eyes. Monk Daming suddenly asked, I heard that you have some attainments in array formations as well. If you fall into the Southern Duel 6 Stars formation, how would you dispel it? His question seemed like a test. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, the Southern Duel 6 Stars formation uses the 6 main peaks as a medium to draw in the power of the stars in the skies. On the surface there are no formation eyes. However, in reality, the 6 main peaks have replaced the formation eyes. As long as I can shatter any of the main peaks, the formation will naturally collapse on its own. Good, good, good. Monk Daming nodded repeatedly. You truly live up to your reputation as the strongest monster incarnate in history. Monk Daming was one of the unprecedented monster incarnates to begin with, and there was probably no one in the world who could obtain such an appraisal from him. In truth, both of them harbored a hint of admiration towards the other in their hearts. Chapter 1440 Secret of the Killing Badge. Chapter 1440 Secret of the Killing Badge. The primordial races have set their killing badges on you. You have to be careful. Monk Daming said, among the monster incarnates of this generation, Teng Lingzi was the weakest. The god race's Firmament Emperor, Goddess Xiaoxiang, the Golden Crow 7th Prince, the Rakshasa race's Rakshasa Yu and the Witch race's young Master Arcane Ghost should all be trying to find out more about you. In truth, if it was a one-on-one fight, Su Zimo could suppress these monster incarnates of the primordial races. However, if the other party brought many mighty figures, half-martial ancestors or set up any traps, it would be difficult for Su Zimo to deal with them. Of course, as long as he could cultivate to the perfected conjoint body realm and refine his Dharmic powers to their limits, nobody would be a threat to him unless a patriarch attacked. Time. What he needed right now was time. Right then, Monk Daming said, "You don't have much time left. The annihilation of the Bloodvine race on 6 Stars Mountain will spread to the Bloodvine race and shock the entire cultivation world before long." More than 10,000 Bloodvine race beings died here. 50 mighty figures, 6 half-martial ancestors and even the young master of the Bloodvine race. With such a heavy loss, there's a high chance that a patriarch of the Bloodvine race will hunt you down. Su Zimo raised his brow. Half of the Bloodvine race beings here died in your hands. If a patriarch comes out, you won't be able to hide either, right? Who knew that I was here? Monk Daming asked with a fake smile. The cultivators of Southern Duel sect, Su Zimo said instinctively. Monk Daming shook his head and smiled. Although I brought them away from 6 Stars Mountain, I did not appear the entire time. They only saw you descending on 6 Stars Mountain to fight against the experts of the Bloodvine race. This time round, when they leave and obtain the news of the destruction of the 6 Stars Mountain Bloodvine race, they will only think that everything was your doing and no one will know that I appeared. Su Zimo was silent. It was only then that he realized that Monk Daming had shifted everyone from Southern Duel sect in advance, not because he was worried about their safety. It was because he did not want to expose his tracks. All the Bloodvine race beings on 6 Stars Mountain were dead. Right now, apart from Su Zimo, no one else knew the truth. However, Monk Daming knew that Su Zimo would not publicize this matter. There was a high chance that Monk Daming had already accomplished some sort of goal by descending on 6 Stars Mountain this time round to search through the memories of 6 Bloodvine half-martial ancestors. However, he did not expose his tracks and stayed out of things completely. It was the same for the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley. Monk Daming did not appear, but he was the eventual winner. His combat strength was already superior to his peers. Coupled with his profound wisdom and scheming capabilities that far surpassed others, someone like that was almost invincible without any weaknesses. Up till this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had encountered many paragons and monster incarnates such as Dean. However, he was way too weak compared to Monk Daming. If Monk Daming wanted to kill Dean, he might not even have to do it himself. He could do it by a scheme and Dean would not even know how he died. However, someone as terrifying as this was defeated in the past as well. He was suppressed for 40,000 years. Right then, Monk Daming said, "There should be an Ashoka wood in Teng Lingzi's storage bag. The Ashoka tree is a sacred tree of the Buddhist monasteries. As for you, you cultivate Buddhism and your body is the creation green lotus. This Ashoka wood is a great tonic for you. If you're able to absorb this Ashoka wood completely, you'll be able to break through to the mid-stage conjoint body realm with ease and might even reach the late-stage conjoint body realm." Su Zimo nodded. However, Monk Daming changed the topic. "Like I said, you don't have much time left." "What do you mean by that?" Su Zimo frowned slightly. "Once I leave 6 Stars Mountain, I'll find a secluded place to hide. Even if a patriarch of the Bloodvine race comes out, will he be able to find me?" That was Su Zimo's plan. Now that Monk Daming was fine, he no longer had any concerns. Therefore, Su Zimo intended to lay dormant after leaving 6 Stars Mountain and absorb all the Ashoka wood before coming out. "Sure," Monk Daming said with conviction. "The patriarch of the Bloodvine race isn't the only one who can find you. Every single one of them can." "MMM?" After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo murmured, "The killing badge." "That's right," Monk Daming said slowly. "After the Bloodvine race released the killing badge on you, you gained a unique aura. No matter where you head to, they will be able to sense you. The killing badges of the other primordial races have the same effect." "I see." Suddenly, Su Zimo was enlightened. It was no wonder why Teng Lingzi had to get the killing badge out even when he was about to die. Furthermore, the reason why he said that Su Zimo would be hunted down by the Bloodvine race for the rest of his life and would have to die was because of the killing badge. If the killing badge was truly so powerful, Su Zimo would be located by the Bloodvine race no matter where he went. He would not have the chance to refine the Ashoka wood. "You're well versed in Buddhist and Fiend secret skills. Are you able to dispel this badge?" Su Zimo looked at Monk Daming and asked in a deep voice. Given the methods displayed by Monk Daming right now, he was almost omnipotent and knew everything. Su Zimo would not be surprised if he could dispel the killing badge. Monk Daming smiled and shook his head. "I can't." After a brief pause he continued, however, there's a place you can try. If the experts there are willing to do something, they might be able to dispel this killing batch. Where? Su Zimo asked. Monk Daming said, Enigma Palace. At the mention of Enigma Palace, the first people Su Zimo recalled were Lin Xuanji and the old man with the Confucian crown. The second person he recalled was someone called Heavenly Secrets and also knew the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Heavenly Secrets was the one who schemed to capture Night Spirit and set up a trap in Heaven and Earth Valley to bait Su Zimo so that he could fight against the major sects, factions and primordial races. He wanted to make use of that battle to refine the bloodlines of Heaven and Earth Valley. However, he did not expect that he would end up paving the path for Monk Daming. Before rushing to Heaven and Earth Valley, Su Zimo received a warning from Lin Xuanji. Furthermore, his handwriting was scribbled in a hurried manner. Could something have happened to Enigma Palace? Right? Monk Daming continued, I've also received news that your big brother should be rushing to Enigma Palace. Big brother? Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. Big brother Yen Beichen. The Asura, yes. Monk Daming nodded. Back in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, the Asura chased after Heavenly Secrets. However, Enigma Palace had many secret skills. Heavenly Secrets had powerful escape techniques and fled the entire way. Although the Asura chased after him for thousands of kilometers, he still managed to return to Enigma Palace. Furthermore, he made use of the power of Enigma Palace to retaliate and injure the Asura severely. If I'm not wrong, the Asura should be heading over for revenge this time round. Initially, Su Zimo was hesitant. However, when he heard that, he made a decision to head to Enigma Palace immediately. Chapter 1441, The Enraged Gaze of the Vajra Cannot Compare to the Lowered Glance of the Bodhisattva. Chapter 1441, The Enraged Gaze of the Vajra Cannot Compare to the Lowered Glance of the Bodhisattva. Yen Beichen's hatred towards Heavenly Secrets stemmed from Qin Pianran's death. He had once said that he would not let anyone who hurt Qin Pianran off. Heavenly Secrets was one of the killers who killed Qin Pianran. Without Heavenly Secrets' divination, Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran's location would not have been exposed and Immortal Sword would naturally not have seized the opportunity to invade. Therefore, no matter who was backing Heavenly Secrets, even if it was a massive entity like Enigma Palace, Yen Beichen would definitely not let them off. If Yen Beichen were to attack Enigma Palace this time round, he would definitely start a massacre and a huge battle would break out. The reason why Su Zimo wanted to rush to Enigma Palace immediately was not because he was worried about Yen Beichen's massacre. He was worried about Yen Beichen's safety. Although Yen Beichen attained the title of Asura, he could no longer be considered as someone of the Fiend sections. He was the second Fiend Emperor hatred, someone who was all alone and hated the entire world. He would not get involved with any sect or faction. To him, the only thing that mattered was hatred. Although he was supported by the two Fiend techniques of the Hatred Sutra and Asura Sutra, it was almost impossible for Yen Beichen to challenge Enigma Palace single-handedly. If nothing unexpected happened, Yen Beichen's cultivation should still be at the conjoint body realm. Enigma Palace was the most mysterious and largest sect in the cultivation world. It was established and passed down by Fairy Ling Long in the ancient era. Throughout history, countless super sects disappeared in the sands of time without a trace. However, Enigma Palace remained standing. Although Enigma Palace rarely interfered in the affairs of the cultivation world, all the super sects in the cultivation world, be it the 9 immortal sects, 7 Fiend sects or 6 Buddhist monasteries, would not take the initiative to provoke Enigma Palace. The prestige and status of Enigma Palace was unshakable in the cultivation world. Fairy Ling Long was the wife of the human emperor. Enigma Palace was more like a sacred ground for humans. Who was Yen Beichen? He was the Asura, a fiend who attained his Tao by killing. One could imagine the outcome of a fiend challenging a sacred place of the human race. Even if the Patriarch of Enigma Palace did not appear, the foundation of Enigma Palace alone was not something that the Asura could defend against single-handedly. More importantly, Heavenly Secrets was an extremely terrifying opponent. If not for Monk Daming's sudden appearance in Heaven and Earth Valley, everyone would have been Heavenly Secrets' chess pieces that were set up for him. Previously, Heavenly Secrets was hunted down by Yen Beichen and escaped back to Enigma Palace in a panic. He was unprepared and merely injured Yen Beichen severely. Given Heavenly Secrets' intelligence, he would definitely expect Yen Beichen to make a comeback. He must have prepared everything and set up a trap, waiting for Yen Beichen to jump in so that he could bury the latter in Enigma Palace. Yen Beichen was no fool. It was not that he had not thought of that. However, he was already fiendish and the hatred in his heart gained the upper hand. Therefore, even though he knew that there were endless dangers ahead, even if he had to be smashed into pieces and his essence spirit was destroyed, he would kill his way into Enigma Palace to take revenge for Qin Pianran. There was only hatred in the Asura's heart, not life and death. Therefore, Su Zimo had to head to Enigma Palace. On the other hand, since there was no news from Lin Xuanji, he could ask about it when he was at Enigma Palace as well. Of course, Monk Daming had just mentioned that Enigma Palace might have a way to dispel the Bloodline race's killing badge. No matter what, he had to head to Enigma Palace. Right then, an extremely powerful aura burst forth from Ming Zhen's body. It was as though another shackle on Ming Zhen had been broken. After entering the conjoint body realm, he broke free of the shackles of heaven and earth once more and his lifespan extended to 20,000 years. Initially Ming Zhen was skinny and frail. Now that he was at the conjoint body realm, his flesh gradually filled and his withered yellow face gradually turned rosy. Ming Zhen's life force intensified. He held a green lantern in his palm. The flame of the green lantern gradually calmed down and emitted a faint glow that fused with Ming Zhen's aura. Monk Daming's gaze landed on Ming Zhen and his eyes lit up. What a pure Buddhist aura! Monk Daming could not help but exclaim. He sensed carefully and was surprised. He actually obtained the inheritance of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. That's right. Su Zimo nodded. That's incredible. Monk Daming nodded slightly. Without great compassion, magnanimity and courage, there's no way he could have obtained the recognition of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. This young monk is not bad. His future accomplishments are limitless. The appraisal of Monk Daming was remarkable. Right then Ming Zhen opened his eyes and stood up slowly with a faint smile. His eyes were clear and bright without any impurities. Those eyes seemed to possess a mysterious noble power and supreme benevolence that could calm one's heart and enlighten all living beings. Even Monk Daming turned his head away subconsciously after meeting Ming Zhen's eyes for a brief moment. The enraged gaze of the Vajra cannot compare to the lowered glance of the Bodhisattva. I finally witnessed that today. Monk Daming lamented. That was a classic saying in the Buddhist monasteries. The enraged gaze of the Vajra could subdue a group of fiends. However, the Bodhisattva's lowered gaze spread compassion throughout all 6 paths of reincarnation. Coincidentally, Monk Daming cultivated the 4 Vajras. As for Ming Zhen, he inherited the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. The reason Monk Daming had that realization was because he turned his head away involuntarily after meeting Ming Zhen's gaze. This did not mean that Ming Zhen's combat strength could compare to Monk Daming. However, Monk Daming lost in terms of comprehension of Buddhism. You guys can leave. I still want to stay here for a period of time. Monk Daming stood on 7 Kills Peak and looked into the distance, waving his hand. There were tens of thousands of Bloodline race beings buried on 6 Stars Mountain, including dozens of mighty figures and 6 half-martial ancestors. There was no way Monk Daming would miss such a bloodline. As Su Zimo pondered, Monk Daming suddenly said, additionally, you have to watch out for those who cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra from now on. Narrowing his gaze slightly, Su Zimo asked, including you? Including me. Monk Daming replied indifferently. I've got it. Su Zimo nodded and prepared to leave. Right then, a gentle breeze blew past and gently lifted Monk Daming's long hair, revealing the thin blood scar on his glabella. Su Zimo frowned as a thought flashed through his mind. He suddenly thought of an extremely bold guess regarding Monk Daming. Let's go, junior brother. Right then Ming Zhen said. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo hid his speculation in the depths of his heart and prepared to check it out when he had the chance. All right. Su Zimo replied before leaving together with Ming Zhen. Is there something on your mind, junior brother? When Ming Zhen saw that Su Zimo was distracted, he glanced sideways and asked curiously. It's nothing much. Su Zimo shook his head and did not think about Monk Daming anymore. He said in a deep voice, I'm prepared to make a trip to Enigma Palace. What are your plans from now on? Nothing much. I just want to return to Dragon Burial Valley to visit Master. Ming Zhen said deeply, there's no hurry about that though. I'll send a message to Dipankara Monastery to inform them that I'm safe and accompany you to Enigma Palace to take a look. He could tell that Su Zimo was probably headed to Enigma Palace for something important. As such, he decided to travel together to see if he could help out. All right. Su Zimo did not decline. Both of them channeled their Dharmic powers and traveled with all their might. Chapter 1442 Human Emperor's Words. Chapter 1442 Human Emperor's Words. Puppet Sect. The two sleazy heads huddled together. Why are you looking for me? I'm not going. Jian shook his head like a rattle drum and replied firmly. This is going to be an amazing tomb. Little Fatty took out a crumpled beast hide and said mysteriously, Lin Xuanji sent us this treasure map and invited us to explore it. Think about it, if even he can't do it, how incredible is this tomb? Back in the Dao Inheritance ground, Lin Xuanji found the astral dragon sputum lair and entered the tomb on his own. He was also an expert in this regard. Pouting his lips, Jian replied, Since when were you so close to Lin Xuanji? Why didn't I know? You're saying that? Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, we fought shoulder to shoulder with him and we had some ties. Little Fatty argued hurriedly. I'm not going. You're definitely setting me up again. Jian shook his head. All these years I've accompanied you to many tombs. Even if we don't talk about life and death, we've gone through thick and thin together. Fatty, you're way too dishonest. You never share good stuff with me. I'll definitely share it with you this time round. Little Fatty replied with a stern expression. I swear I'll definitely give it to you if I find something good this time round. Alright, I'll trust you one more time. Hesitating for a moment, Jian took the treasure map and stared at it for a long time before frowning. This place is in the heaven-expanding mountain range. It's quite close to Enigma Palace. It's fine, there's still Lin Xuanji, right? Little Fatty waved it off. With him backing us, nobody will know. Pure Maiden Sect. In the room, a charming woman sat by the window. She wore a gentle white Taoist robe that accentuated her perfect figure. It was curvy and exquisite. The woman propped her chin on one hand, looking distracted with a hint of worry on her face. Auntie Gu, you're looking for me? Right then, a girl in pink entered the room. The moment the girl in pink entered the room, it was as though the entire room had turned brighter. Even the beautiful woman sitting there paled in comparison in front of the girl in pink. The girl in pink was none other than Demonish Ji. The beautiful woman sitting there was Gu Shi, the former chief steward of the Sky Treasure Auction House in the capital of Great Zhou. Over the years, Gu Shi had already entered the Void Reversion realm and became a Void Reversion Dao being. However, Demonish Ji had far surpassed her Cultivation realm. Demonish Ji was already at the Conjoint Body realm. As the pure maiden of the Fiend sects, Demonish Ji had sufficient cultivation resources and had obtained multiple great opportunities over the years. For example, the inheritance of Fairy Ling Long from the Human Emperor's Palace and the complete Pure Maiden Sutra in the Dao Inheritance Ground had allowed Demonish Ji's cultivation to advance tremendously. She was lauded as the #1 Pure Maiden of the Fiend sects for the past 100,000 years. Auntie Gu, why did you lose so much weight? Demonish Ji frowned slightly and felt her heart wrench. Although her current cultivation and status far surpassed Gu Shi, she still had a deep relationship with the latter and did not neglect her at all. It's nothing much. Gu Shi forced a smile. You're worried about the Asura? Demonish Ji sighed internally and could not help but ask. Gu Shi lowered her head slightly in silent acknowledgement. Demonish Ji knew that many years ago, Gu Shi had a deep crush on Yen Beichen. Later on, after hearing some rumors about Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran, Gu Shi was heartbroken and could not let go for many years. Later on, Qin Pianran died and the true Asura was born. The battle of Heaven and Earth Valley shocked the entire world. Gu Shi's cultivation realm was not high and she was not qualified to head to Heaven and Earth Valley. However, when she heard the Asura's condition, she was secretly worried. Yaoyan, I know his personality best. After a long silence, Gu Shi said, Heavenly Secrets killed Qin Pianran. He'll definitely look for Heavenly Secrets at Enigma Palace. Yaoyan, I'm begging you, go take a look at Enigma Palace. If you see him in trouble, please lend him a hand. Gu Shi's voice trembled and her eyes reddened. Among the people I know, you're the only one who can help him. There was no way the Fiend sects would step in for something as such. Who would go against Enigma Palace for the sake of a lunatic who had no regard for any relationships and was not in the right mind? Enigu, don't worry. I'll make a move right away and rush to Enigma Palace. Demonish G agreed without hesitation. Pondering for a moment, she said, however, given my combat strength, I'm afraid I won't be able to go against the powerful Enigma Palace either. I can only try my best. Yaoyin, you must be careful not to implicate yourself. If anything goes wrong, abandon him. Gushi said resolutely. She was worried about the Asura. However, she did not wish for Demonish G to end up dying because of the Asura either. It's nothing. Demonish G smiled gently and shook her head. Enigma Palace won't dare to hurt me. Half a month later, at the Heaven-Expanding Mountain Range. The Heaven-Expanding Mountain Range was filled with thick fog all year round, and Enigma Palace was situated within. Ever since the ancient era, the world had changed on Tianhuang mainland and countless battles broke out, destroying endless sects. Even super sects were not spared. However, Enigma Palace had always stood tall in the Heaven-Expanding Mountain Range. Not only that, up till the ancient era, there had never been anyone or any sect or faction that dared to cause trouble for Enigma Palace in the Heaven-Expanding Mountain Range. This was a sacred ground for the human race. However, on this day, a person arrived in the Heaven-Expanding Mountain Range. The person wore a black robe and his white hair draped over his shoulders. His eyes were pitch black and he had a cold expression as he walked over slowly. Dragging a saber that was coiled with fiend chi in his right hand, he drew a series of sparks on the ground. No matter who it was, they would feel a torrential hatred and killing intent when they saw that person. The Asura Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen walked through the thick fog. The thick fog was extremely confusing and could even block spirit consciousnesses. Cultivators with lesser cultivation realms would get lost in the fog, let alone locate Enigma Palace. However, that thick fog was useless against Yen Beichen's pitch-black eyes. He continued forward towards Enigma Palace. The Hatred Fiend Saber seemed to have sensed something and turned extremely excited at that moment, trembling and buzzing on the ground. Before long, Yen Beichen paused and looked up. Not far ahead, on a continuous mountain range, there were ancient Dao palaces that resembled stars in the skies. Every single Dao palace seemed to possess a mysterious secret. There was a gigantic stele erected further ahead with two bold and vigorous words written on it, Enigma Palace. The words exuded an extremely terrifying might. As Yen Beichen approached, the pressure became increasingly obvious. In the end, even he could not withstand it. Right now, Yen Beichen was already at the late-stage conjoint body realm. However, he could not advance a single step in front of the stele. This stele had a powerful origin. The words on the stele were written by the eternal human emperor personally in the past. The words of the human emperor were eternal. Chapter 1443, Exquisite Killing Formation. Chapter 1443, Exquisite Killing Formation. Yen Beichen's gaze shifted and landed on the stele not far away. Human Emperor, Fu-fu. Yen Beichen had a vengeful expression as he laughed bitterly. Why are you stopping me when you don't know anything at all? You really intend to stop me with just 3 words written on a lousy stele? Yen Beichen hollered and pitch-black hatred fiend chi spread out from his body. He resisted the might of the stele and walked forward step by step. The terrifying thing about the Hatred Sutra was that the deeper the hatred in one's heart, the stronger the power that could be triggered. That aura is way too annoying. Yen Beichen's gaze was cold as he glared at the stele not far away with a murderous aura. The Fiend Emperor Hatred was the #1 Fiend Emperor of the ancient era. Although he killed countless primordial races in the ancient era, immortals and fiends were enemies after all. Yen Beichen cultivated the Hatred Sutra and inherited the Hatred Fiend Saber. Naturally, he was extremely resistant to the aura of the human emperor released by the stele. Since you want to stop me, I'll kill you. Yen Beichen arrived before the stele and swung his arm. The Hatred Fiend Saber streaked through the air with a cold flash of light and slashed towards the stele. Clang. The Hatred Fiend Saber struck the stele heavily and let out an ear-piercing sound with sparks flying. The 3 words on the stele shone brightly and released an extremely terrifying recoil that surged into the Hatred Fiend Saber. The burst of that power triggered the ferocity of the Hatred Fiend Saber instead. The aura of the Fiend Saber surged and derived endless hatred fiend chi. It was pitch black as ink and filled with torrential hatred, devouring the stele instantly. The 2 energies were in a stalemate. This had already turned into a fight between the Hatred Fiend's saber and the steel. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks sounded from the Fiend chi. Eventually, the Hatred Fiend's saber gained the upper hand. After all, the steel was only left behind by the human emperor, but the Hatred Fiend's saber was a true emperor weapon. Yan Beichen was expressionless as he dragged the Hatred Fiend's saber and continued heading towards the many Dao palaces before him. The Fiend chi behind him dissipated, revealing scattered rocks. The eternal steel with the human emperor's words etched on it was crushed into rubble by the Hatred Fiend's saber. Audacious Fiend. A holler sounded. Extremely powerful auras burst forth from each Dao palace. Many experts of Enigma Palace had arrived. At a glance, there were more than 100 of them. Among them, there were 10 half-martial Ancestor experts alone. The rest were all conjoint body mighty figures. Most importantly, this was not the full strength of Enigma Palace. Asura, Enigma Palace did not kill you last time. You don't know what's good for you and even dare to return. A half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace hollered with a stern expression. This was half-martial Ancestor Chen Tian of Enigma Palace. Another half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace said coldly, "You destroyed the steel of Enigma Palace with the human emperor's words. You truly deserve to die for your crimes." This was half-martial Ancestor Divine Turtle Dove of Enigma Palace. Asura, you met with a great calamity and ended up in such a state. Another half-martial Ancestor Li Heng said with a pained expression. Initially, I felt some pity for you. To think that you wouldn't repent and even came to Enigma Palace to cause trouble. The three half-martial Ancestors had an extremely high status in Enigma Palace and were the strongest in combat. Even against more than 100 experts of Enigma Palace, Yan Beichen was fearless as he said expressionlessly, "Hand over heavenly secrets and I'll leave." Insolent. Half-martial Ancestor Divine Turtle Dove hollered, "Heavenly Secrets is now the young master of Enigma Palace and has a noble status. How can you provoke him?" Throughout history, there has truly never been anyone who dared to challenge Enigma Palace. You're the first, Asura. Half-martial Ancestor Chen Tian said coldly, "Asura, do you really think that Enigma Palace is a place you can come and go as you please?" As though he could not understand the warning from the experts of Enigma Palace, Yan Beichen merely asked indifferently, "Are you guys going to stop me as well? If that's the case, don't blame me for starting a massacre in Enigma Palace." When Yan Beichen said that, the Hatred Fiend's saber in his hand seemed to have sensed something and buzzed, turning extremely excited. Truly hopeless. Half-martial Ancestor Li Heng shook his head and sighed. "I've long said that the Asura has lost his humanity and turned into a complete fiend with zero remorse." Right then, a voice sounded slowly, "If such a fiend is allowed to grow, he will be a calamity for the human race and bring endless trouble to Tianhuang mainland." A person slowly walked over from the many Dao palaces. His robes fluttered and he wore a Confucian crown on his head. With handsome features and a folding fan in his hands, he had a faint smile on his face the entire time. When Yan Beichen saw that person, layers of hatred fiend chi derived from his body. The hatred in his eyes had already reached its limits as he barked hatefully, "Heavenly Secrets! Asura, you're truly bold." Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently and said calmly, "However, Enigma Palace is not a place you can challenge. Since you decided to go against Enigma Palace, prepare to die here." Kill? When Yan Beichen saw Heavenly Secrets, he could no longer hold it in and charged towards the latter with the Hatred Fiend's saber. The many experts of Enigma Palace were motionless as they looked at Yan Beichen from afar with mocking gazes. "Fu." Heavenly Secrets chuckled. "Enigma Palace is a sacred place for the human race. There's no way a fiend with your bloody hands can enter." He conjured hand seals with both hands and there was a gentle quake beneath his feet. "Activate." Buzz. A series of divine lights burst forth from the Dao palaces on the heaven-expanding mountain range and entered the ground beneath Yan Beichen's feet. Immediately after, the formation patterns shone and illuminated the world. An ancient formation was activated and Yan Beichen was trapped within instantly. Yan Beichen froze. In his vision, Enigma Palace, Heavenly Secrets and the others had already vanished. There were only layers of fog in front of him. No matter how he waved the Hatred Fiend's saber, channeled his spirit consciousness and released Dharmic powers, the fog before him could not disperse. All his power vanished into the fog like a rock sinking into the ocean. "Heavenly Secrets, come out." Yen Beichen roared and surveyed his surroundings with immense hatred in his eyes. He took a step forward. All of a sudden, an extremely terrifying power descended and slashed towards Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen harumphed coldly and waved the Hatred Fiend's saber. He slashed in reverse and shattered that power. He took another step forward. Swoosh! An even more terrifying sword beam descended. Although the Hatred Fiend's saber managed to defend against the sword beam, Yen Beichen's arm felt slightly numb. In Enigma Palace, Heavenly Secret stood with his hands behind his back with a calm expression and a faint smile. Asura, don't even think about coming out alive after falling into the Exquisite Killing Formation. The Exquisite Killing Formation. In the ancient era, it was the #1 killing formation of Tianhuang mainland. That was also the reason why Fairy Ling Long One was renowned throughout the world. The Exquisite Killing Formation was complex and every step was filled with killing intent. A single misstep would cause one to sink deeper and attract endless attacks from the killing formation. Throughout history, even top-tier formation grandmasters could not dispel the Exquisite Killing Formation. There was only one way to dispel the Exquisite Killing Formation. There were a total of 380 steps to the Exquisite Killing Formation. Each of the 380 steps had to be undertaken correctly. A single misstep and one would be doomed to eternal damnation. In the ancient war, this Exquisite Killing Formation killed countless experts of the primordial races. Throughout history, the reason why no sect or faction dared to provoke Enigma Palace was mostly because of the Exquisite Killing Formation. Chapter 1444, Appearance of the Pure Maiden. Chapter 1444, Appearance of the Pure Maiden. Two furtive figures were stealthily hiding in a dark corner in the heaven-expanding mountain range, watching everything unfold before Enigma Palace. The two figures were Shi Jian and Little Fatty, who had rushed thousands of miles to look for the tomb. What's the background of this Exquisite Killing Formation? It seems like it's quite powerful. Shi Jian muttered. More than that, this is the #1 killing formation of the ancient era. Little Fatty said, this formation was set up by Fairy Ling Long personally. Who in the world can dispel it? Brother Su is well versed in formations. If he's here, he should be able to dispel this formation, Shi Jian said deeply. Hee hee. Little Fatty laughed. Although I respect bro, he truly can't dispel the Exquisite Killing Formation. Even the #1 master of formations in Tianhuang mainland won't be able to dispel it, let alone bro. What do you mean? There's no hope for anybody that falls into the formation? Shi Jian's eyes widened. Little Fatty nodded. As long as you take a wrong step in this Exquisite Killing Formation, the attacks you receive will increase endlessly and become more ferocious. Initially there might be some powers of the conjoint body realm. Later on, there will be powers of the half-martial ancestor realm and even divine powers. What? Shi Jian muttered. The power of divine powers was the power of an ancestor realm cultivator. Little Fatty said, don't doubt me. There were many Mahayana patriarchs who died in this formation in the ancient war. I heard that back then Fairy Ling Long controlled this killing formation personally and even killed an emperor. So amazing. Shi Jian was shocked. What do you think? Little Fatty said, Fairy Ling Long did not become an emperor, but she established Enigma Palace and was renowned through the ages. Do you really think it's just because she's the wife of the human emperor? Shi Jian asked, doesn't that mean that the Asura is dead for sure? You can't say that either. Little Fatty said, if Fairy Ling Long descends, there might be hope for the Asura. Tisk. Shi Jian pouted his lips. Why isn't Lin Xuanji out yet? Little Fatty frowned slightly and rubbed his chubby palms anxiously. Shi Jian replied, what's the hurry? I reckon it's inconvenient for him to come out now that the Asura is here at Enigma Palace. Now's the best time. Little Fatty said, the attention of everyone from Enigma Palace is on the Asura. Let's dig up the tomb and take away the treasures inside. There are so many experts in Enigma Palace. It's hard to guarantee that they won't notice anything after the Asura dies. It'll be difficult to make a move then. What do you mean? Shi Jian asked. Little Fatty said darkly, let's not wait for Lin Xuanji. That old fogey is unreliable and his whereabouts are unpredictable. Let's not bother about him since the treasure map is in our hands. That works too. Shi Jian hesitated for a moment. However, why do I feel that something is amiss? There's something strange about this. What's wrong? You love to think too much, stupid head. Little Fatty pouted. Don't worry, you'll definitely be the first to pick out the treasures we discover this time round. All right. Shi Jian had no more doubts and nodded. Let's begin. In front of Enigma Palace. Yen Beichen had already fallen completely into the exquisite killing formation. Bang, bang, bang. He wielded the Hatred Fiend saber and channeled both Fiend sutras to their limits. Layers of Fiend chi covered the skies and blocked the attacks time and again. However, he could no longer walk. The attacks of the exquisite killing formation turned increasingly ferocious. However, he could not find any way to dispel it. Heavenly secrets, get out. Yen Beichen roared loudly like an injured demon beast. His eyes were pitch black and the hatred in his heart was at its limits. In truth, if not for the support of that torrential hatred, he would have been minced to death by the exquisite killing formation as well. Enigma Palace. Heavenly Secrets and the others looked down from above with mocking expressions. There's no wonder why the Asura is a monster incarnate of the Fiend sections. If I'm not wrong, he has already taken 209 steps in the exquisite killing formation. Half-Martial Ancestor Li Heng sighed gently. Even if we fall into it, we'll die before we can take 100 steps. That's useless though. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. The further he progresses, the more difficult it will become. The pressure on him doubles with every step he takes. Unless Fiend Emperor Hatred is reborn, the Asura will definitely die in less than half an hour. Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtle Dove said coldly. Hee hee, what a crowd. Right then, a chuckle sounded from midair in a pleasant manner. When the experts of Enigma Palace heard that laughter, their hearts skipped a beat and they could not help but want to see what sort of a peerless beauty the owner of that voice was. Even Half-Martial Ancestor Qian Tian and the others frowned. Even Half-Martial Ancestors were affected. Everyone turned towards the sound. In the void not far away, a girl in pink stood in midair. She had a graceful figure and a flawless face. A single smile from her was enough to dim the world. His watery eyes seemed like they could steal one's soul with a single glance. Brup, brup. Gulps could be heard from Enigma Palace. More than half of the conjoint body mighty figures of Enigma Palace revealed infatuated expressions and fixed their gazes on the girl in pink. They could not take their eyes off her at all. Although the remaining conjoint body mighty figures realized something, they struggled to defend. Many mighty figures shuddered and lowered their gazes, not daring to look at the girl in pink. The girl in pink was this generation's pure maiden, Demoness Ji. After Demoness Ji obtained the complete Pure Maiden Sutra and advanced to the conjoint body realm, her bewitching techniques were completely infused into her bones. She did not even have to activate it intentionally. Every single frown, smile and action of hers could cause one to bow down to her. At that moment, some of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace lost their minds and walked towards Demoness Ji in a daze, completely losing their minds. Humph. Harumphing coldly, Heavenly Secrets suddenly opened his mouth and said word by word, Pure Maiden, you sure are capable. Among the many conjoint body mighty figures, Heavenly Secrets was the only one who could maintain his composure. Every single word he said used a sound domain secret skill and echoed in the minds of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace like a hammer. Many mighty figures of Enigma Palace woke up with ugly expressions. The more they thought about it, the scarier it was. If not for Heavenly Secrets' reminder, they would have been bewitched and controlled by Demoness Ji by now. Even if she wanted them to commit suicide on the spot, they wouldn't hesitate. What is this generation's pure maiden doing at Enigma Palace? Heavenly Secrets asked indifferently with a smile. Hee hee, I want to take someone away. Demoness Ji smiled brightly in an innocent manner. She did not seem to possess the slightest bit of scheming and conniving in the cultivation world. The smile of this young girl could cause an inexplicable sense of bliss in someone's heart such that they would want to protect her. Chapter 1445 Reneging. Chapter 1445, Reneging. Oh. Heavenly Secrets raised his brow slightly and asked, Who do you want to take away? The Asura. Demoness Ji pointed at the Asura who was covered in injuries in the exquisite killing formation. The smile in Heavenly Secrets' eyes intensified as he shook his head gently. The Asura doesn't care about relationships and can no longer be considered as someone of the Fiend sections. You don't seem to have any ties with him either. Why do you want to get involved? I naturally have my plans. Demoness G bowed to Heavenly Secrets from afar and smiled. Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, please give me some face. I'll definitely remember this favor. From now on, as long as you have any requests, as long as it's not overboard, I'll definitely agree to them. Her words were flirtatiously ambiguous. Many mighty figures of Enigma Palace wished that they could agree on behalf of Heavenly Secrets. Foo-foo. The smile on Heavenly Secrets' face did not reduce and his eyes remained clear. All right, if you can bring the Asura away, I naturally won't stop you. Are you serious? Demoness G asked with a smile. Of course. Heavenly Secrets said with a smile, I won't stop you if you can bring the Asura out of the Exquisite killing formation. However, out of goodwill, I have to remind you about something. It's easy to enter the Exquisite killing formation, but it's difficult to come out. Thank you for the reminder. Smiling, Demoness G's figure flashed and she entered the Exquisite killing formation without hesitation. Are all the paragons of this generation so ignorant? Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove sneered. Half-Martial Ancestor Li Hung frowned. I heard that the pure maiden obtained Fairy Ling Long's inheritance in the Human Emperor's palace. It's better not to kill her. She has a death wish. Half-Martial Ancestor Qian Tian pouted. The Exquisite killing formation is right there and we didn't ask her to get in. She was the one who insisted on barging in. It has nothing to do with us. As everyone discussed, Demoness G had already entered the Exquisite killing formation. The Asura has taken 209 steps. Let's see how many steps this Demoness can take. Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove sneered. The moment he said that, Demoness G had already taken a step in the Exquisite killing formation. It was an extremely beautiful step that seemed to exude an indescribable mysteriousness. The attacks of the Exquisite killing formation did not descend. Everyone from Enigma Palace frowned slightly. However, nobody minded it since it was just a single step. Immediately after, Demoness G advanced through the Exquisite killing formation with mysterious steps towards Yen Beichen. The distance between the two of them shortened rapidly. Right from the beginning, the Exquisite killing formation had not attacked Demoness G once. How could this be? Her footwork is completely different from the steps required to dispel the Exquisite killing formation. They're completely wrong, but why isn't the Exquisite killing formation reacting at all? The mighty figures of Enigma Palace were shocked and puzzled. That footwork. The half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace were bewildered, as though they had thought of something but were unsure. It's the Exquisite steps. Right then, Heavenly Secret said slowly. What? Everyone from Enigma Palace was shocked. Heavenly Secret said in a deep voice, Demoness G used the Exquisite steps just like Founder Master Ling Long in the past. With the aura of Founder Master Ling Long, there's naturally no way this killing formation would attack her. The inheritance that Demoness G obtained in the Human Emperor's palace was clearly the Heaven Fiend dance. How could it be the Exquisite steps? Someone asked in disbelief. I'm not sure about that. Heavenly Secret shook his head. This Exquisite steps was the ultimate technique that brought Fairy Ling Long to fame. With that footwork at her peak, Fairy Ling Long could even match the emperors of the primordial races. However, although Fairy Ling Long established Enigma Palace, she did not leave the legacy of the Exquisite steps in Enigma Palace. To think that the Exquisite steps would reappear on the pure maiden of the Fiend sects. Stop her. Heavenly Secret suddenly said, we can't let her take away the Asura. Otherwise, Enigma Palace will never have peace. Some of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace did not hesitate when they received Heavenly Secrets' orders. Dharmic arts were released, one towards Demoness G who was inside the Exquisite killing formation. He. Sensing danger, Demoness G could not help but chuckle with a mocking expression. To think that the young master of Enigma Palace would renege on his words. What a joke. You're wrong. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. I only promised you that I won't stop you. However, I didn't say that the others of Enigma Palace won't stop you. Foo-foo. Demoness G laughed. To think that the young master of Enigma Palace would resort to such a trick. How despicable. Enigma Palace is a sacred place of the human race. Since when have we been reduced to such a state? Even I feel embarrassed for you. Although the attacks of many conjoint body mighty figures were ferocious, Demoness G could avoid danger each time with the use of her exquisite steps. When he heard Demoness G's mockery, the smile on Heavenly Secrets' face disappeared as he glanced sideways. Elders, please kill her. No, this won't do. Half-Martial Ancestor Li Heng's expression changed as he frowned. She obtained the inheritance of Founder Master Ling Long. Even for the sake of the Founder Master, we can't kill her. Heavenly Secrets glanced sideways and asked coldly, if she takes the Asura away, he'll probably be at the Mahayana realm by the time he returns. At that time, there'll be rivers of blood in Enigma Palace. Who will take responsibility for that? But Half-Martial Ancestor Li Heng wanted to argue still. However, Heavenly Secrets waved his hand. There's no need to argue about this. As the young master of Enigma Palace, I have the right to give this order. Strike. The other half-martial ancestors frowned slightly and were hesitant. Demoness G had obtained the inheritance of Founder Master Ling Long, and it was the most important inheritance. If they attacked her, it would be a great disrespect to Founder Master Ling Long. Half-Martial Ancestor Chen Tian and Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove exchanged glances. Both of them could see a fleeting, strange blood glint in the depths of the other's eyes. Bang! Bang! The two half-martial ancestors attacked at the same time without any reservations. The might of a half-martial ancestor descended. Although Demoness G had the exquisite steps, her movement speed was still greatly affected. How dare you? Demoness G hollered softly, I've obtained Fairy Ling Long's inheritance and yet you guys dare to try and kill me. Humph, a demoness that bewitches the entire world deserves to die. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian hollered and was unmoved. A fiend and a demoness barging into Enigma Palace is a crime punishable by death. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtledove said coldly. Shoo, shoo. Two flying swords slashed down. They slashed down almost at Demoness G's head. A wisp of black hair fell. It was a close shave. Demoness G broke out in cold sweat. Normally speaking, given the fact that she inherited the exquisite steps, Enigma Palace would not harm her even if she committed a grave mistake on account of Founder Master Ling Long. However, she had not expected Enigma Palace to be so ruthless. Poof, poof. In her moment of distraction, 2 wounds appeared on her body. Even with the exquisite steps, she could not last long against the pursuit of 2 half-martial ancestors. Am I going to be buried in the exquisite killing formation today? Demoness G laughed bitterly. All of a sudden, a long howl sounded from afar, as loud as the clouds and approaching rapidly like a thunderbolt. Demoness G's eyes lit up when she heard that howl. Chapter 1446, Massive Battle. Chapter 1446, Massive Battle. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and murmured softly, having already guessed who it was, it's him? MMM? Everyone from Enigma Palace frowned slightly. It was a robust roar with surging blood chi. Although they were thousands of kilometers apart, one could still sense the strength of the intruder. What's happening? Who dares to come over to Enigma Palace to create a ruckus? A mighty figure of Enigma Palace looked into the distance with an unfriendly expression. Seems like it's time for Enigma Palace to establish our dominance. Another mighty figure said slowly. Let's go. The mighty figure of Enigma Palace leaped up and said in a deep voice, let me see who's the intruder. If you're here to target Enigma Palace, Fufu, don't blame me for being nasty. The other conjoint body mighty figure soared into the air as well. I'll go with you. Both mighty figures felt pent up. Be it the Asura Yen Beichen at the front or Demoness G who came later on, the 2 mighty figures could not defeat either of them. Now that another tactless person had arrived, the 2 conjoint body mighty figures could not help but speed in the direction of the howl. However, the 2 of them did not walk far before 2 figures appeared in the distant horizon and arrived before them in the blink of an eye. One of them was a young monk holding a green lantern in his hands. He had handsome features, clear eyes and a calm expression. The other person had green robes and black hair, looking refined and scholarly. However, there was a sharp glint in the scholar's eyes and he exuded a shuddering killing intent. Who are you? The mighty figure of Enigma Palace hollered. Desolate Marshal. The green-robed cultivator did not stop in his tracks and said 2 words that were earth-shattering. The expressions of the two mighty figures of Enigma Palace changed starkly. It was mighty figure Desolate Marshal. Although they resided deep in Enigma Palace and rarely roamed the cultivation world, they had heard too many rumors about Desolate Marshal over the years. The moment Desolate Marshal's name was spoken, the auras of the two mighty figures of Enigma Palace were crushed. This is Enigma Palace. One of the conjoined body mighty figures took a deep breath and composed himself, saying in a deep voice, "Even if you're Desolate Marshal, you can't barge in. Otherwise you'll be killed without mercy." Throughout history, no one had been able to barge into Enigma Palace. As the largest sect and faction in the cultivation world, Enigma Palace's foundation was terrifying and could not be shaken by a couple of paragons and monster incarnates. The two mighty figures of Enigma Palace gradually became more spirited when they thought about their fellow sect mates and 10 half-martial ancestors behind them. Scram. Su Zimo's gaze shifted. When he saw Yen Baichen and Demoness Ji trapped in the Exquisite killing formation and met with danger repeatedly, his expression turned cold and his killing intent surged. Audacious. The two mighty figures of Enigma Palace hollered with darkened expressions. As mighty figures with the backing of Enigma Palace, they had never been scolded like this before. You guys are the audacious ones. Su Zimo's gaze was like lightning and he had no intention of wasting his breath on the two of them. Without stopping, he charged forward and threw 2 punches towards them. You. The two mighty figures of Enigma Palace widened their eyes and channeled their blood chi and Dharmic powers hurriedly, raising their arms to defend. They had not expected that Su Zimo would be even more domineering than the Asura and attack them without a second word. Bang. Bang. The two mighty figures of Enigma Palace blocked Su Zimo's fist. However, both of their faces revealed immense pain. Crackle. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Their arms were snapped by Su Zimo's fist. The power of that punch was still extremely terrifying, breaking through their defenses and landing on their chests. Poof! An arrow of blood burst forth from their backs. Their chests were punctured by Su Zimo's punch and their hearts exploded. Their blood chi deteriorated instantly. Conjoint body mighty figures could regrow severed limbs by surging Dharmic powers. However, that punch nearly ruptured their bodies and their injuries were way too severe that they could not recover within a short period of time. 2 conjoint body mighty figures fell from midair with pale expressions. In fact, neither of them could stop Su Zimo at all. Zimo, don't step into this formation. Right then, Demoness Ji's voice sounded. As long as you can stop the others, I can take Yen Baichen and leave. All right. Su Zimo nodded in agreement. He had long heard about the legend of the Exquisite killing formation. Given his combat strength, he would not be able to escape if he were to fall in and would only be buried. Desolate Marshal. Half-Martial Ancestor Li Heng said in a deep voice, "You've already sown deep feuds with many super sects and yet you dare to provoke Enigma Palace. I have no feud with Enigma Palace and I've never thought of becoming enemies with you guys." Su Zimo said slowly, "However, Heavenly Secret set up a trap in Heaven and Earth Valley and harmed my life. There's only one person I want to kill." What a joke. Heavenly Secrets is the young master of Enigma Palace. Half-Martial Ancestor Li Heng frowned. If you want to kill him, you'll be going against Enigma Palace. If I'm not wrong, the titular disciple of Enigma Palace is Lin Xuanji and he's the #1 candidate for the young master. Since when was it Heavenly Secrets' turn to cause trouble? Su Zimo asked coldly. Where's Lin Xuanji? Get him to come out and meet me. Su Zimo shouted. Desolate Marshal, you have rapacious designs and colluded with a primordial taboo to try and massacre humans to rule over Tianhuang mainland. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. Lin Xuanji has a close relationship with you and can't be unrelated. He was suppressed under palace rules a long time ago. All right. Su Zimo nodded. Since that's the case, there's no need to talk about it. Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo strode forward and arrived before Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove and Half-Martial Ancestor Chen Tian in the blink of an eye, chanting Sanskrit. Om, Ma, and I, Pa, Mi, The 6 words of Daming Mantra were released at the same time. Su Zimo's hands changed rapidly and in the blink of an eye, 6 Daming Dharmic seals burst forth and suppressed the 2 half-martial ancestors. You must have a death wish. Insolent. The many experts of Enigma Palace cursed. There were a total of 10 half-martial ancestors standing here. There were more than 100 conjoint body mighty figures present. Unless there was a Mahayana patriarch, such terrifying strength was not something a mere conjoint body mighty figure could contend against. It wasn't just half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove and half-martial ancestor Qian Tian, the other half-martial ancestors attacked as well, wanting to suppress Desolate Martial right away. At the same time, 100 conjoint body mighty figures surrounded him. "Junior brother, leave these conjoint body mighty figures to me," Ming Zhen said in a deep voice. Before his sentence was finished, Ming Zhen surveyed his surroundings and chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly. He conjured hand seals and attacked the conjoint body mighty figures. Hell Suppression Seal. The legacy Dharmic seal of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. The descent of that seal could suppress hell. The moment the gigantic seal descended, the mighty figures of Enigma Palace felt a suffocating might and their expressions changed. Of course, there were many mighty figures in Enigma Palace. Although the Hell Suppression seal was powerful, Ming Zhen's cultivation was slightly inferior to suppress 100 conjoint body mighty figures. He had just advanced to the conjoint body realm after all. On the other side, the moment Su Zimo exchanged blows with the 10 half-martial ancestors, he did not hold back at all and a massive battle broke out. The mountains shook and the weather changed. Chapter 1447 Mystic Firmament Record. Chapter 1447 Mystic Firmament Record. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 10 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace attacked at the same time and more than 10 Dharmic weapons tore through the air and whistled through the air, releasing an extremely terrifying power. The Dharmic weapons of half-martial ancestors were even stronger than mighty figure Dharmic weapons. There was a trace of divine power in those Dharmic weapons. Although that trace of divine power could not turn Dharmic weapons into Dharmic treasures, it was enough to transform mighty figure Dharmic weapons and increase their strength significantly. If it was a mighty figure Dharmic weapon, Su Zimo could fight it head-on with his Green Lotus true body. However, he did not dare to be careless against so many half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapons. Slapping his storage bag, Su Zimo took out a dark gray mountain and it expanded with the wind. It was the ancient unique treasure, the Mystic Magnet Mountain. In the blink of an eye, the Mystic Magnet Mountain had already grown to a height of 1,000 feet. At the conjoint body realm, Su Zimo's Dharmic powers were pure and powerful. The size of the Mystic Magnet Mountain was also increasing and the magnetic force it emitted was at its limits. The mountain peak that was 1,000 feet tall descended and shrouded everyone's heads. It simply covered the skies and rumbled with a suffocating might. The power of magnetism had a huge impact on the many Dharmic weapons present. The more metal ores and materials used in the Dharmic weapons, the stronger the suction force. Some of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace were distracted and their destiny Dharmic weapons left their control and flew towards the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Clang, clang. In the blink of an eye, dozens of Dharmic weapons flew away and were pinned motionlessly on the Mystic Magnet Mountain. With that, the pressure on Ming Zhen decreased significantly. However, the Mystic Magnet Mountain had almost no effect on a half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapon. Humph. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian sneered, "Our Dharmic weapons are fused with the power of divine powers and the Mystic Magnet Mountain is useless. So, this ancient unique treasure is in your hands. That's perfect. Since you've offered yourself, Enigma Palace will accept this ancient unique treasure." Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove did not conceal his intention to kill for the treasure. "You still want to snatch my treasure?" A green streak of light appeared on Su Zimo's glabella and he scooped, squeezing the Creation Lotus platform in his palm as he said coldly, "I'm just afraid you won't be alive to do so." Swoosh. Su Zimo channeled his blood chi and instantly, the sound of a tsunami surged from his body in a terrifying manner. Bang, bang, bang. His blood chi surged and a glow spread. He raised the Creation Lotus platform and repelled all the incoming half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapons. The Creation Green Lotus was indestructible. Even a half-martial ancestor Dharmic weapon could not destroy it. Mystic Firmament Sword Chi. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian conjured hand seals and Dharmic powers surged between his hands. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic sword was formed with a sharp edge and torrential sword chi. "Slay." He pointed forward and hollered softly. The gigantic sword tore through the air as though it wanted to slice the world into two. Mystic Firmament Dharmic Seal. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng conjured a Dharmic seal and his Dharmic powers were incomparably pure. Carrying the might of thunder, he smashed down towards Su Zimo. Mystic Firmament Cyclone. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtledove rubbed his palms together and a Dharmic power storm swept over, causing sand and rocks to fly everywhere in a dizzying manner. The other half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace attacked one after another and released terrifying Dharmic arts. The cultivation techniques that the half-martial ancestors cultivated were the foundational secret of Enigma Palace, the Mystic Firmament Record. The Mystic Firmament Record was created by Fairy Ling Long and was all-encompassing. Be it Dharmic arts, secret skills, sword arts, formation, elixir and weapon refinement techniques, they were all detailed within. More importantly, it was said that the human emperor chipped in to perfect it at the end of the book, causing the power of this cultivation technique to increase tremendously. The Dharmic arts of a half-martial ancestor were no small matter. Furthermore, there was a wisp of divine power in those Dharmic arts. No matter how strong the Dharmic powers of a conjoint body were or the grade of his cultivation techniques, they were no match for the Dharmic arts of a half-martial ancestor. On the other side, Heavenly Secrets did not attack Su Zimo. He had a deeper understanding of the entire situation. On the surface, Su Zimo was the greatest threat right now. However, in reality, Su Zimo alone was not enough to deal with Enigma Palace. The key to this battle was to kill the Asura as soon as possible. Therefore, at the start of the battle, Heavenly Secrets left the battlefield and arrived above the Exquisite killing formation. Although he had a smile on his face, he released a killing move in his hands, prepared to kill Demonish G and the Asura within. When he saw that, Su Zimo did not hesitate. He closed his sword fingers and conjured a sword art, roaring into the skies. Bang! Boom! Boom! Killing intent shook the heavens and countless stars appeared in the firmaments, shifting positions with chaotic trajectories. When the heavens' killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. Tiske! Tiske! Tsk! One after another, sword chi burst forth from Su Zimo's body in a blinding manner in tens of thousands. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and the others were shocked. The Battle of Biming Town and Six Stars Mountain happened recently. Furthermore, it was relatively secretive and almost nobody saw it. Many experts of Enigma Palace knew that Su Zimo knew the heaven-slaying sword art, but none of them knew that he had already comprehended it to that level. The heaven-slaying sword chi enveloped every single point of sight. Under normal circumstances, even the heaven-slaying sword chi could not fight against Dharmic arts that were fused with a single divine power given Su Zimo's cultivation realm. However, there were way too many heaven-slaying sword chi. If one sword chi was not enough, he would use 10. If 10 was not enough, he would use 100 or 1,000. Although the gigantic sword conjured by half-martial ancestor Chen Tian was sharp and had a torrential sword chi, it was filled with injuries when it was struck by the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi and dissipated instantly. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng's mystic firmament Dharmic seal was riddled with holes by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The mystic firmament cyclone of half-martial ancestor Divine Turtledove had already been pierced by the heaven-slaying sword chi and dissipated into the world. Bang! 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 10,000 sword chi burst forth and clashed against the Dharmic arts of the 10 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace, causing a deafening bang. The entire void was almost torn apart by the thousands of sword chi. The Dharmic powers in the battlefield surged. Even ordinary conjoint body mighty figures wouldn't be able to withstand such a collision and would be shredded into pieces by the various powers. That killing intent and sharpness were way too immense. The Dharmic arts of the 10 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace were blocked completely. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and the others had wary expressions and had no choice but to retreat slightly to avoid the sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi for the time being. Some of the mighty figures of Enigma Palace who were initially exchanging blows with Ming Zhen could not dodge in time and were slashed down by the incoming heaven-slaying sword chi. None of them had expected Su Zimo to be able to release such a terrifying counterattack against the suppression of 10 half-martial ancestors. Seizing the opportunity, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he released boundless golden light. Instantly, he arrived before Heavenly Secrets and raised the Creation Lotus platform, smashing it towards the latter's head. Heavenly Secrets wanted to kill the Asura and Demonish G. There was no way Su Zimo would let him succeed. Chapter 1448, Celestial 5 Degenerations. Chapter 1448, Celestial 5 Degenerations. Unknowingly, a folding fan had already appeared in Heavenly Secrets' hands. The smile on Heavenly Secrets' face did not reduce when he saw Su Zimo appear. He closed his folding fan and tapped towards Su Zimo's Creation Lotus platform. The folding fan was about to collide with the Creation Lotus platform. The corners of Heavenly Secrets' lips curled as he revealed a strange smile. Suddenly, the folding fan in his hands changed directions and pointed forward. The folding fan tapped towards Su Zimo's wrist. This time round, the variation was extremely small and it was a last-minute change. It was rather sentient and displayed Heavenly Secrets' powerful heart. Heavenly Secrets was definitely not weak to become the young master of Enigma Palace. It was not only in terms of his scheming and planning. His combat strength was extraordinary as well. Back in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley he could even fight Yen Beichen. If not for Monk Daming's secret attack to destroy Heavenly Secrets' Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, Yen Beichen would have been doomed in that battle. Alright. Su Zimo's spirit perception was strong and he sensed it before Heavenly Secrets changed tactics. He stopped in time and forcefully lifted his wrist. If his wrist were to collide with Heavenly Secrets' folding fan, even if it wasn't severely injured, the outcome wouldn't be good. Heavenly Secrets sneered coldly. He seized the opportunity to retreat and distance himself from Su Zimo. Desolate Marshal, do you really think that I'm afraid of you? Heavenly Secrets still had a smile on his face, as though he was in control of everything and was incomparably confident. Su Zimo's gaze landed on the half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace who were charging over and suddenly shouted, "Your young master of Enigma Palace has cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra." The 10 half-martial ancestors paused for a moment. Most of the half-martial ancestors frowned and revealed puzzled expressions. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra was way too terrifying that even they were wary of it. If the young master of Enigma Palace were to cultivate it, things would get out of hand. Only half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove and half-martial ancestor Chen Tian had calm expressions. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove sneered, "Desolate Marshal, what nonsense are you spouting? You can't slander the young master of Enigma Palace casually." "That's right." Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian said coldly, "Desolate Marshal, you're the one who truly cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Back in the Battle of Myriad Phenomenon City, countless people witnessed you releasing the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, Fufu." At that point, the many half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace nodded to themselves and the doubts they had vanished. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. He had indeed cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, but he had sensed the danger in time and no longer used it. However, it was different for Heavenly Secrets. In order to cultivate his fiend techniques, Heavenly Secrets even set up a killing trap in Heaven and Earth Valley and schemed against countless sects and factions to refine the bloodlines of all the experts in the world. Although he and Heavenly Secrets cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, they were fundamentally different. However, there was no way to explain that. Nobody would believe him even if he explained it. Not far away, Heavenly Secrets smiled faintly with a mocking expression, as though he was mocking Su Zimo's unnecessary actions. "Desolate Marshal, why are you doing this?" Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. "It's fine if you don't believe me." Su Zimo had a calm expression. "Let's see how long you can last in my hands without using the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra." Since everyone from Enigma Palace did not believe him, Su Zimo would force Heavenly Secrets to use it in public. At that time, the truth would naturally be revealed. "Desolate Marshal, you underestimate me." Heavenly Secrets shook his head gently and retracted his smile gradually. "You've only just entered the conjoint body realm. Do you really think that you're invincible among your peers? It's enough to suppress you." Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he conjured hand seals. His body shone with the power of thunder and was blinding, as though he was in a thunderstorm. "All right." Heavenly Secrets nodded slightly. "I'll show you what I'm capable of. 5 celestial degenerations first." Heavenly Secrets' hands shifted continuously as he conjured an extremely mysterious Dharmic art and pointed it at Su Zimo. A strange power descended. Su Zimo could not dodge it all. The Dharmic power that Su Zimo had just conjured dissipated rapidly. The power of thunder dimmed and vanished in the blink of an eye. Second degeneration, Essence Spirit Degeneration. Heavenly Secrets hollered and changed his hand seal, pointing at Su Zimo. A strange power descended on his Essence Spirit. As though his Essence Spirit was locked by an extremely terrifying power, the power of his Essence Spirit deteriorated at an extremely fast speed. Even though his Essence Spirit was fused with the Tao of the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects and was pure and condensed, it could not defend against the corrosion of that power. At this speed, his Essence Spirit would probably wither within dozens of breaths. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly as he moved his palm and sent the Creation Lotus platform into his consciousness. The black-haired Essence Spirit strode onto the Creation Lotus platform and assumed a lotus position. Shoo. The 63 lotus holes spewed out rays of green light that surrounded the black-haired Essence Spirit and gradually negated the power. Even so, Su Zimo broke out in cold sweat. Such methods were truly unheard of. There were many Dharmic arts and secret skills in the world. Even with his experience, he had never encountered such a terrifying secret skill. Phew. Right then, Heavenly Secrets chuckled. Not bad, you're actually able to withstand the first two powers of degeneration. After a brief pause, he changed the topic. However, there are 3 more. I want to see how long you can last in my hands. This was what Su Zimo said earlier on, and Heavenly Secrets returned it completely. Third degeneration, Physical Body Degeneration. Heavenly Secrets pointed his Dharmic art at Su Zimo. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. The strange power descended once more. But this time round, his flesh began to wither and his life force drained under the influence of that power. Before he could react, Heavenly Secrets' voice sounded once more. Fourth degeneration, Bloodline Degeneration. The moment he said that, Su Zimo's blood chi began to deteriorate and drain rapidly as well. His body was like a gigantic airbag with a hole punctured. His blood chi drained continuously at a shocking speed. His body and blood chi were failing at the same time. Heavenly Secrets had a smug expression as he smiled gently. The Dharmic art in his hands changed once more as he said slowly, Fifth degeneration, Lifespan Degeneration. Instantly, Su Zimo's lifespan decreased continuously. A secret skill to reduce one's lifespan. Up till this point of his cultivation, apart from Baron from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo had not encountered a secret skill that could reduce one's lifespan. But today he finally saw it on Heavenly Secrets. Although this secret skill was not as terrifying as Baron, it had the effect of decreasing one's lifespan by hundreds of years with a single breath. What was even more frightening was that the secret skill released by Heavenly Secrets did not merely reduce one's lifespan. It degenerated the 5 sources of power of a cultivator. Dharmic powers, essence spirits, physical body, bloodline and lifespan. These were the 5 degenerations of celestial beings. Chapter 1449, Appearance of the Asura. Chapter 1449, Appearance of the Asura. The celestial 5 degenerations used the power of heaven and earth to weaken the root of a cultivator's strength. There were very few people who could cultivate the secret skills of the mystic firmament record successfully. It was already rare for cultivators of Enigma Palace to cultivate the first 2 degenerations. Even from the ancient era till now, there were not many people who could cultivate the 5 degenerations completely. The celestial 5 degenerations was extremely powerful. If all 5 degenerations were released and used on a person at the same time, that person's dharmic powers, essence spirit, physical body, bloodline and lifespan would be depleted. Even if that person did not die, he would be equivalent to a cripple. The scariest thing was that this person had to watch helplessly as his dharmic powers, essence spirit, physical body, bloodline and lifespan withered. He had to endure the pain and suffering. In the ancient era, there were often cultivators who could not endure it before the end and committed suicide on the spot with their Tao hearts crushed. The fact that their cultivations that they had worked so hard till this point to grind was destroyed overnight was an experience worse than death. Su Zimo sensed the changes in his body with a cold expression. Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was indeed strong. If he had encountered Heavenly Secrets a few years ago, he would have been doomed. But now that his Green Lotus true body had undergone a complete transformation, Su Zimo was equivalent to a reborn Grade 7 Creation Green Lotus. Legend has it that the Creation Green Lotus was an utmost treasure of the upper world and could only be born after seizing the creation of heaven and earth. No matter how strong the celestial 5 degenerations was, it merely borrowed the power of heaven and earth. Let's see if your celestial 5 degenerations or my green lotus true body is stronger. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he channeled his bloodline with all his might. Under the envelopment of the power of the celestial 5 degenerations, his aura rose against the tide and surged rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had broken through a critical point. Su Zimo's figure seemed to vanish from the spot, and in its place was a towering creation green lotus that connected heaven and earth. It was jade green and crystalline without any impurities. A gigantic lotus blossomed slowly with a dazzling glow. Bloodline phenomenon. This is creation green lotus. The many half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace exclaimed. Even heavenly secrets frowned. He could predict everything in the world and divine everyone except Su Zimo. Previously, he tried to divine Su Zimo's situation but nearly suffered a backlash and his essence spirit was almost destroyed. Ever since then he no longer dared to attempt it. Be it the Battle of Biming Town or Heaven and Earth Valley, few people in the cultivation world knew about it. Less than that, they did not know that Su Zimo had already grown to such an extent. By the looks of it, Desolate Martial has already fused with the creation green lotus. How terrifying. As expected of the strongest monster incarnate in history. Does this mean that Desolate Martial will grow together with the creation green lotus and its cultivation will advance together with his? That's a little terrifying. If the creation green lotus grows to grade 8, even Emperor weapons won't be able to destroy it. Many half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace could not help but exclaim when they saw that. The power of the celestial 5 degenerations gradually dissipated. Although the celestial 5 degenerations could weaken anyone, it could not do anything to the creation green lotus. Humph. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtledove said coldly, "What is there to be worried about? Let's join forces and kill Desolate Martial here to eliminate all future troubles once and for all." That's right. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian nodded as well. Everyone, Desolate Martial colluded with a primordial taboo and has evil intentions. He's even more dangerous than the Asura and we can't let him leave. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng hesitated for a moment. However, when he saw that the two half-martial ancestors, Divine Turtledove and Chen Tian, had already charged forward, he could only attack as well. 10 half-martial ancestors charged forward once more. The creation green lotus swayed gently and released a terrifying power. The void was like a calm lake that suddenly rippled. The 10 half-martial ancestors had grim expressions. Although the ripples looked weak, they were extremely terrifying. Even their bodies would be crushed if they were rammed by it. The 10 half-martial ancestors controlled their destiny Dharmic weapons and blocked in front of them, neutralizing the incoming ripples. They did not have an easy time defending against the ripples. The 10 half-martial ancestors shuddered and looked at Su Zimo with even more caution in their eyes. Bang, bang, bang. After a slight breather, Heavenly Secrets joined forces with the 10 half-martial ancestors and counterattacked. Dharmic arts tore through the air and the power of half-martial ancestors descended. They surged and struck the creation green lotus. The attacks rained down like a violent storm and the creation green lotus bent from the wind several times and was almost crushed. However, the creation green lotus straightened its body before long and stood proudly. The storm was intensifying. Finally, this creation green lotus of the universe could not hold on any longer. The lotus leaves on the green lotus were riddled with holes and wounds appeared on its stem as well. Su Zimo could not withstand it and his human figure reappeared. Desolate Martial, you're finished? Heavenly Secret said coldly. Not necessarily. As Su Zimo's blood chi surged, the wounds on his body healed rapidly. His gaze inadvertently landed on the exquisite killing formation beneath. At that moment, two figures walked out slowly from the exquisite killing formation. Heavenly Secrets' expression changed. As though he realized something, his figure swayed and he suddenly dodged into the distance. Right then, a pitch-black saber beam descended from the skies, slashing in the direction of Heavenly Secrets with endless hatred and torrential killing intent. Heavenly Secrets had sensed it long ago and avoided it first. Another half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace who was standing there as well did not have the same luck. When the half-martial ancestor saw that he could not dodge, he raised the saber in his hands instinctively, wanting to defend and find another chance to escape. Clang. The pitch-black saber beam struck his saber. The saber beam shuddered and revealed its true form. It was the Asura Yenbeichen's Hatred Fiend saber. The Fiend chi intensified. The saber of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace shattered instantly. The saber beam expanded and cut the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace into two. Fresh blood gushed out. The half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace channeled his Dharmic powers fanatically and wanted to reconstruct the lower half of his body. However, the pitch-black Fiend chi on the Hatred Fiend saber had already surged into his body through the wound. Not only did that Fiend chi contain the Hatred Fiend chi, there was also the Asura Fiend chi. The power of hatred and killing dominated the body of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace and destroyed all life. If this half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace were to abandon his body and escape from the battlefield with his essence spirit, he could still survive. By the time he realized, it was already too late. Fiend chi surged into his spirit platform and tore through his consciousness, devouring his essence spirit. In the blink of an eye, his essence spirit was destroyed and he died. A half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was dead. Heavenly secrets, pay with your life. A roar filled with hatred and killing intent sounded in the world. Anyone who heard it could sense the grief and indignation in it. Up till this point of the battle, Su Zimo had finally won some time. The Asura had reappeared. Chapter 1450 Tricked. Chapter 1450, Tricked. In the depths of the heaven-expanding mountain range, in a long tunnel, two furtive figures were advancing carefully. Little Fatty walked at the front with a map in his left hand and a geomantic compass in his right. From time to time he would match the map and continue digging. The commotion of Enigma Palace seems a little too great. Shi Jian followed behind and muttered softly. At that moment, they were deep underground and the voices of the people above could no longer be heard. However, the sounds of the battle broke out from time to time. The ground shook and mud would splash occasionally. Although they had yet to even catch sight of the tomb, their faces were covered in dirt. Who knows? Logically speaking, the Asura should have been killed by the Exquisite killing formation a long time ago. Could something have happened? Shi Jian shook his head. By the time Su Zimo and the others arrived, Shi Jian and Little Fatty had already dug underground and did not know what was happening above. They merely heard the endless sounds of battle. Who cares? The more they fight, the better. That way we won't have any chance of being exposed. Shi Jian shook his head and said casually before continuing to study the treasure map. Are you sure you can do it? It's been so long but we haven't even caught a glimpse of the tomb. Shi Jian came over and grumbled. Little Fatty was also sweating profusely as he said embarrassedly, the location of this tomb is indeed difficult to locate. Furthermore, there are many seals. Along the way we've already broken dozens of seals. There's truly something strange about this heaven-expanding mountain range. Ever since we entered, my geomantic compass is no longer useful and I can't differentiate directions. Are we lost? Shi Jian was shocked. No. Little Fatty shook his head hurriedly. Don't worry. Judging from the location of the map, we're almost there. This tomb is so secluded with many layers of seals, there's definitely great treasures within. Hurry and work harder. Little Fatty urged. Shi Jian controlled the 5 elements puppets and continued to dig forward according to Little Fatty's instructions. Using the puppets to open up the path would save time and energy. Furthermore, he and Little Fatty won't be implicated even if there were any dangers. A moment later Little Fatty hollered, "Stop." Shi Jian's spirit consciousness moved and the 5 elements puppets stopped. Look at the location. It should be around the left side. I'll do it personally. Rubbing his chubby palms, Little Fatty raised his spatula and started digging to the left. Before long he lifted the spatula. Little Fatty's eyes lit up as he grinned. Success. I finally dug through it. I'll go and pick my treasures first. Shi Jian was invigorated and pushed Little Fatty away hurriedly. He dug around the hole a few times before entering through it. He was halfway in when he raised his head and was stunned. Little Fatty was waiting at the back. When he saw Shi Jian stop halfway through the climb, he could not help but urge, "Hurry and go in. Don't stay here." Unable to wait any longer, Little Fatty pushed Shi Jian over with both hands before climbing ahead himself. After entering the tomb, Little Fatty looked around excitedly with widened eyes. The chamber was a little strange. It was not big and could be seen at a glance. It was empty with nothing but a person. MMM? Stunned, little fatty glared at the person before him with widened eyes. Why was there someone here? That person's back was facing them and he exuded a life force. Clearly he was not a dead man but a living being. Right then the person turned around slowly and sighed. You guys are finally here. You're killing me. Lin Xuanji. Little fatty and Shijian exclaimed. The person in the chamber was Lin Xuanji who had invited the two of them here. How unlucky. Shijian remarked indignantly, to think that this lad beat us to it and wasted our efforts again. Something's not right. Little fatty frowned. He looked around and felt that something was amiss. This isn't a tomb chamber. Shijian gradually came to his senses as well and mumbled, this looks like a prison. Lin Xuanji coughed gently with an embarrassed expression. Gradually little fatty realized something and yelled, Lin Xuanji fuck. You were locked here and actually created a treasure map to trick the two of us here to dig a tomb. Little fatty charged forward with bloodshot eyes and a furious expression. He gripped Lin Xuanji's neck tightly, wanting nothing more than to kill the latter. Fuck. Lin Xuanji, you sure are evil. Shijian snapped out of his stupor as well and could not help but curse. Alright. That's enough. Lin Xuanji struggled for a moment before heaving a sigh of relief and saying while panting, I'm not lying. There are indeed treasures here. Where? Take them out. Little fatty spread his hands and demanded angrily. From the looks of it, if Lin Xuanji could not produce any treasures, he would have to rush up and kill the latter. Lin Xuanji coughed and pointed to himself, saying self-righteously, I'm the greatest treasure. What treasure is more precious than me? Fuck. Little fatty and Shijian felt their stomachs rumble and almost vomited on the spot. The two of them truly had no way of dealing with such a shameless person. Silly Jin, haven't you been pestering me to let you pick a treasure? This great treasure is for you. Little fatty pointed at Lin Xuanji. Shijian's face was filled with rejection as he remarked in disdain, I don't want that. This old lad is way too much. He's even more of a scam than you. Brothers, I had no choice either. Lin Xuanji explained, I was plotted against by my fellow sect mates and was locked here with no way out. What about the treasure map you sent out? Little fatty glanced askance. I still have some tricks up my sleeves. It's not difficult for me to send a message. Lin Xuanji said, no matter how much I think about it, only two of you can save me. Brothers, you've been in the tomb robbing business for many years and are experienced. No one can match you. Be it the tomb of a mighty figure or a patriarch, both of you are able to come and go as you please. There are layers of seals beneath here and no one can determine the direction. Brothers, the two of you were the only ones who could go against all odds to locate this place eventually. Brothers, although you're only Dharma characteristic Tao lords, even conjoint body mighty figures and Mahayana patriarchs can't compare to such methods of yours. Given your capabilities, both of you will definitely leave your names in history. Little Fatty had a glib tongue and praised Little Fatty and Shijian fervently. Shijian was already completely lost and immersed in the fantasy of having his name passed down through history. Little Fatty was the only one who was trying his best to control himself. However, he could not stop the smugness in his eyes. Cough. Finally, Little Fatty coughed gently and waved it off pretentiously. It's better to keep a low profile for something like this. It's enough that you know about it. Don't spread it. We're brothers, not people who value fame and fortune. Shijian added. Yes. Lin Xuanji nodded hurriedly. Brothers, you are the most aloof from worldly affairs among the people I know. Brothers, you have righteous personalities and you're filled with the strongest sense of justice. Little Fatty and Shijian were invigorated and beamed brightly. Suddenly, it felt as though this trip was completely worth it. Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. Even if the two of them could take it, he was almost about to throw up from whatever he was saying. Chapter 1451 Might of the Tao Fire. Chapter 1451 Might of the Tao Fire. Demoness Ji brought Yen Beichen out of the Exquisite killing formation. Yen Beichen had been suppressing a surge of hatred and anger in his heart the entire time. As the hatred was vented with that single slash, a half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace was killed on the spot. Of course, the reason why the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace died was also because he had fought Su Zimo previously. Right now he was no longer at his peak. Furthermore, his attention was entirely focused on Su Zimo. He had not expected such a terrifying slash to be released from below. The moment the Asura appeared, the situation changed instantly. When Su Zimo was alone, the 10 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace and a monster incarnate like Heavenly Secrets were already in a stalemate with him. Now that there was an additional Asura with torrential hatred and a murderous aura while Enigma Palace was missing a half-martial ancestor, the situation took a turn for the worse. I'll help Ming Zhen. Demoness Ji knew very well that given her combat strength, even if she helped Su Zimo, it would be difficult for her to pose much of a threat to half-martial ancestor experts. On the other side, Ming Zhen was fighting against 100 mighty figures of Enigma Palace alone and could barely hold on. With light steps, she arrived on the battlefield and smiled at the mighty figures of Enigma Palace, exhaling with a sweet fragrance. Everyone, do you really want to be enemies with me? After cultivating the pure Maiden Sutra, Demoness Ji exuded an indescribable and unstoppable charm. Even women would want to get close to her unconsciously, let alone men. This was a true charm that could turn the world upside down. On the other side, Yan Beichen no longer had anyone else in his eyes. He was completely immersed within his own hatred. There was no life and death or reservations in his heart, there was only a single thought, to kill Heavenly Secrets and take revenge for Qin Pian Ran. Yan Beichen's eyes were pitch black and were completely occupied by the hatred fiend Qi. Heavenly Secrets suddenly felt chills run down his spine as he looked at the pitch-black fiend eyes. This was Enigma Palace after all. Even with the Asura and Desolate Marshal, they won't be able to cause any trouble. However, against a lunatic like the Asura, Heavenly Secrets suddenly felt regret. To be precise, he was the one who created this generation's Asura. Yan Beichen was already covered in injuries after taking 209 steps in the Exquisite killing formation. However, at that moment he did not feel any pain. He soared into the air and charged towards Heavenly Secrets with the Hatred Fiend's saber. Die, fiend! Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtledove hollered and slapped his storage bag. A golden streak of light flew out and lunged towards Yan Beichen. The golden light was not a Dharmic weapon, but a living being. Su Zimo could clearly see that it was a bird, a divine turtledove. The divine turtledove was a pure-blooded ferocious beast, and it was said that it possessed the bloodline of a 3D golden crow. When cultivated to its limits, it could even transform into a true 3D golden crow. This divine turtledove was extremely fast and had a powerful bloodline. Its body burned with golden flames, and by the looks of it, it was on the verge of transformation. Yan Beichen did not stop in his tracks, as though he had not seen the divine turtledove at all. The other half-martial ancestors attacked as well. Although Yan Beichen was unable to extricate himself from the depths of his hatred and killing instincts, he had absolute trust in Su Zimo. He knew that Su Zimo would definitely help him stop the others. Su Zimo made a move. A pair of wings grew from Su Zimo's back and lightning flashed on his body. Releasing boundless golden light, his speed was at its limits. His movement technique was even faster than the divine turtledove, and he stopped it before extending his palm to grab the ladder. The divine turtledove let out a long cry and its gaze was ferocious. The flames on its body intensified as it reached out with its sharp claws, wanting to tear Su Zimo's palm apart. Beast, how dare you act so brazenly before me? Su Zimo hollered, notwithstanding the fact that you haven't transformed into a golden crow, I've even killed a true 3D golden crow. In the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, this green lotus true body had indeed killed beings of the golden crow race. Against the sharp claws of the divine turtledove, Su Zimo's palm had no intention of dodging and grabbed over. No matter how sharp the divine turtledove's claws were, they could not injure the green lotus true body. In a flash, Su Zimo had already gripped the divine turtledove in his palm and exerted strength. Groar! The divine turtledove shrieked into the skies. It was too skinny and was not even the size of Su Zimo's palm. How could it withstand his burst power? Desolate Marshal, how dare you? Half-martial ancestor divine turtledove roared. For so many years, that divine turtledove had been by his side ever since he started cultivating. Even his Dao title was divine turtledove. This divine turtledove was more important to him than anything. However, he was facing Desolate Marshal. Desolate Marshal was not afraid of his threat at all. Exerting strength in his palm, Su Zimo crushed the divine turtledove and fresh blood gushed out. Its essence spirit could not even manage to escape, and it was killed by Su Zimo's palm. Even with the death of the divine turtle dove, the flames on its body did not extinguish and burned on Su Zimo's palm. Desolate Marshal, the flames of the divine turtle dove will never extinguish. The flames of the divine turtle dove will burn you to ashes. Even if you're the green lotus true body, nothing will change. Half-Marshal Ancestor Divine Turtle Dove said coldly. Not necessarily. Su Zimo sneered and swiftly conjured hand seals with his flaming palm. Swoosh. Suddenly 3 flames burned in Su Zimo's palm. Scarlet, Immortal Tao Fire. Golden Buddhist Tao Fire. Black Fiend Tao Fire. The 3 Tao fires burned and suppressed the divine turtle dove's flames in Su Zimo's palm instantly, devouring it without a trace. The attacks of Half-Marshal Ancestor Chen Tian and the others descended. Su Zimo's expression was cold, but his eyes seemed to be burning with 2 flames. He threw out the 3 Tao fires in his hands and hollered, Kachirati Tao Fire. Before his sentence was finished, an essence spirit flame burst forth from Su Zimo's essence spirit and fused into the 3 Tao fires. The flames intensified and surged into the air, engulfing towards Half-Marshal Ancestor Chen Tian and the others. The might of the Kachirati Tao Fire was extremely strong and could threaten Half-Marshal Ancestors. Back on 6 Stars Mountain, the reason why the Kachirati Tao Fire was suppressed so easily was mainly because it was not condensed enough. The power of the Kachirati Tao Fire was spread across the entire 6 Stars Mountain and was naturally not a threat to conjoint body mighty figures and Half-Marshal Ancestor experts. However, it was different at that moment. The Kachirati Tao Fire rained down and only targeted the 9 Half-Marshal Ancestors of Enigma Palace. A Half-Marshal Ancestor of Enigma Palace wanted to fight it head-on with a Dharmic art. However, he did not expect his Dharmic art to be burned into nothingness the moment he released it. Even his Destiny Dharmic weapon dimmed in the sea of flames. The Half-Marshal Ancestor realized that something was amiss and wanted to retreat, but it was already too late. Sparks flew and landed on his body. In the blink of an eye, it expanded against the wind and he turned into a gigantic human-shaped fireball. The Half-Marshal Ancestor of Enigma Palace struggled and howled in pain. No matter how he channeled the Dharmic powers of his bloodline, the Kachirati Tao Fire on his body could not be extinguished. The vitality of a Half-Marshal Ancestor was way too exuberant. If it was any ordinary conjoint body mighty figure, they would have been burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. The flames on the body of the Half-Marshal Ancestor of Enigma Palace lasted for more than 10 breaths before gradually extinguishing, leaving only ashes that scattered in the void. Chapter 1452, Dharmic Breaking Bow. Chapter 1452, Dharmic Breaking Bow. The Kachirati Tao Fire descended and another Half-Marshal Ancestor of Enigma Palace died. Half-Marshal Ancestor Chen Tian and the others were also in the Tao Fire and defended with all their might. All of them had ugly expressions and were drenched in sweat. On the other side, Yen Beichen clashed against Heavenly Secrets. Under normal circumstances, after cultivating the Hatred Sutra and Asura Sutra, Yen Beichen's combat strength should be even above Heavenly Secrets. However, he was injured, and coupled with the fact that Heavenly Secrets had many methods, the two of them were in a stalemate and it was difficult to determine the victor within a short period of time. Su Zimo controlled the Kachirati Tao Fire and Dharmic powers surged endlessly. Burn it. In Su Zimo's consciousness, the Creation Lotus platform spun slowly and released rays of light that circled around the black-haired essence spirit, nourishing it and replenishing its power. If not for the Creation Lotus platform, Su Zimo would have collapsed a long time ago. The Kachirati Tao Fire burned into the skies and trapped the remaining 8 Half-Marshal Ancestors of Enigma Palace within, causing the flames to burn stronger and more exuberant. Everyone, I don't want to be enemies with Enigma Palace. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, as long as you stay in the Tao Fire quietly, you won't be in any danger. He was not Yen Beichen after all. He could still maintain his composure. Nobody knew if this matter was done by Heavenly Secrets alone or masterminded by Enigma Palace. At the end of the day, Su Zimo was on good terms with Lin Xuanji. Furthermore, he had interacted with an old man from Enigma Palace and the latter did not seem like a bad person. As long as Lin Xuanji or the old man appeared, today's matter should end. Desolate Marshal, you killed a Half-Marshal Ancestor of our sect and you expect to stay out of things? Half-Martial Ancestor Qian Tian sneered. Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove said coldly, "That's right, Desolate Martial. You killed my spirit beast and barged into my palace. You and the Asura will have to die here today. The two of you had better shut up." Su Zimo's gaze was icy as he said slowly, "Otherwise I'll send the two of you on your way first." Humph. Right then, a cold harumph sounded from Enigma Palace with immense rage and endless might. "Your Desolate Martial? You sure are cocky to act so brazenly in front of Enigma Palace." Accompanied by that shout, a figure rose slowly from Enigma Palace, emitting an endless might as his burning gaze landed on Su Zimo. Palace Lord. Half-Martial Ancestor Qian Tian and the others were delighted and exclaimed when they saw that figure. This was the current Palace Lord of Enigma Palace, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe. "Desolate Martial, you're finished?" Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove turned to look at Su Zimo with a mocking expression and smiled. The Palace Lord was initially in seclusion. Now that you've alarmed him, even immortals won't be able to save you. "I'll burn you first." Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and the Kacharati Dao fire intensified, surging towards Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove. Half-Martial Ancestor Qian Tian and the others hurriedly attacked and helped Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtledove defend against Su Zimo's attack. Right then the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe, took out a gigantic bow from his storage bag. It was green all over and resembled jade. When the jade bow was taken out, the Dharmic powers in the void seemed to be drawn towards it. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. It was an extremely special bow that he seemed to have seen in an ancient book. Suddenly, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe picked up the jade bow and drew the bowstring. The bow was like a full moon. However, there was no arrow on the bow. In Su Zimo's confusion, the Dharmic powers around Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe surged towards his fingertip as though they had gone mad. In the blink of an eye, a Dharmic power arrow was condensed on the bowstring. As for the Dharmic powers around Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe, they were sucked dry by the jade bow. The moment that Dharmic power arrow was formed, Su Zimo's hair stood on end. Swoosh. Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe released his hand and the arrow tore through the air. It was not aimed at Su Zimo but the ancient unique treasure, the Mystic Magnet Mountain, that was in midair. Boom. There was a loud bang. It was deafening. The Mystic Magnet Mountain that was 1,000 feet tall was shot down from midair by the Dharmic power arrow. It shrank continuously and its glow dimmed as it fell to the ground. The many Dharmic weapons that were initially sucked on the Mystic Magnet Mountain broke free and returned to the control of many mighty figures of Enigma Palace. The mighty figures of Enigma Palace were invigorated. Without the restriction of the Mystic Magnet Mountain, Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji's situation began to turn grim. "Zimo, watch out. That's one of the unique treasures, the Dharmic breaking bow." Right then, Demoness Ji's voice sounded. Su Zimo let out a look of realization as he finally recalled the origin of that bow. The Dharmic breaking bow was one of the unique treasures and was ranked alongside the Mystic Magnet Mountain. However, among the 7 unique treasures, the Dharmic breaking bow was the number 1 in offense. More importantly, a single arrow from the Dharmic breaking bow could break all Dharmic arts. No Dharmic art could withstand a single blow from the Dharmic breaking bow. After shooting the Mystic Magnet Mountain, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe's gaze turned towards Su Zimo. "You're next." Although his voice was calm, it possessed a supreme might that was unquestionable. Suddenly, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe drew his bow. Another Dharmic power arrow condensed on his bow and absorbed all the Dharmic powers in the surroundings. Swoosh. The arrow tore through the air and passed through the Kacharati Dao fire. A terrifying scene unfolded. Everywhere the arrow passed, it absorbed the surrounding Dharmic powers fanatically. Even the Kacharati Dao fire could not defend against it. The arrow was extremely fast and passed through the Kacharati Dao fire. Instead of diminishing, its power climbed to its limits. However, the Kacharati Dao fire was already extinguished. The Dharmic power of the Dao fire was completely absorbed by the arrow and naturally could not burn the latter. An arrow was enough to destroy the Kacharati Dao fire. Furthermore, the power of the arrow became even more terrifying after absorbing the Dharmic power of the Kacharati Dao fire. In the blink of an eye, it arrived before Su Zimo. It was too fast. Even with his spirit perception, Suzimo could not react in time. The Creation Lotus platform was in his consciousness, nourishing his essence spirit and could not be taken out in time. Suzimo could only raise his hands and try to grab the arrow. Fufu, you overestimate yourself. Half-martial ancestor Qingzhe sneered when he saw that. Bang. In a flash, Suzimo closed his palm and grabbed the Dharmic power arrow. However, the power of that arrow was way too strong. Even Suzimo could not grab it at all and could only try his best to negate some of the power of the arrow. Swoosh. The arrow pierced through his hands. Suzimo's palm was torn by the arrow and was dripping with blood. The arrow pierced right into Suzimo's chest. It flew out of his back. The grade 7 green lotus true body was almost indestructible. However, it was pierced by the Dharmic breaking bow with a single arrow. Normally speaking, the power of the Dharmic breaking bow would not have reached this level. However, the reason why the Dharmic breaking bow could become an ancient unique treasure was because the arrow could absorb Dharmic powers to strengthen itself. This arrow could only possess such terrifying might after absorbing the Dharmic powers of the Kacharati Dao fire. Chapter 1453 Essence Spirit Fight. Chapter 1453, Essence Spirit Fight. A bloody hole appeared on Suzimo's chest and blood gushed out like a fountain. Zimo? Demoness Ji exclaimed with deep worry in her beautiful eyes. Suzimo stood in midair with a cold expression, as though he could not feel any pain at all. He merely looked at the palace lord of Enigma Palace, half-martial ancestor Qingzhe, who was not far away. The Green Lotus true body had never suffered such a serious injury after transforming into a grade 7 creation Green Lotus. If it was anyone else, that arrow that pierced their chest would have destroyed all life in their body. However, Suzimo's Green Lotus true body was equivalent to a grade 7 creation Green Lotus with exuberant vitality. Even after receiving such a serious injury, his vitality surged and healed his wounds wildly. This Dharmic breaking bow was troublesome to deal with. Any Dharmic art released would be absorbed by the Dharmic breaking bow and turned into its power. However, Suzimo believed that no matter how strong a Dharmic weapon was, it would definitely have flaws. Right then, Suzimo's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely realized something. Lapse. Time lapse. As an ancient unique treasure, the bow that was shot out was not a true arrow but a Dharmic power arrow. In other words, activating the Dharmic breaking bow was equivalent to activating a Dharmic art. For the same Dharmic art to be activated again, there had to be a time lapse for the essence spirit to catch a breather. The logic was the same as how one had to retract their fist before making a second punch after punching. In fact, some of the more terrifying Dharmic arts required a longer lapse. After half-martial ancestor Qingzhe shot the mystic magnet mountain, he did not shoot a second arrow immediately. Instead, he waited for a moment before shooting a second arrow at Suzimo. At that moment, half-martial ancestor Qingzhe did not attack immediately as well after shooting the second arrow. Although the lapse was short, Suzimo noticed it still. Desolate Marshal, you're quite capable to defend against an arrow from the Dharmic breaking bow. Half-martial ancestor Qingzhe said indifferently, however, I'll take your life with this second arrow. I don't think you have a chance anymore. Suzimo's gaze intensified as he touched his glabella gently with his fingers. Closing his sword finger, he pointed towards half-martial ancestor Qingzhe and shouted, Green Lotus Sword, slash. Beams of green light spewed out. The 63 green lotus seeds rapidly formed a sword in midair and slashed towards half-martial ancestor Qingzhe. This was a killing technique targeted at the essence spirit and was one of Suzimo's strongest trump cards. Among his peers, Monk Daming was the only one who could defend against that killing move unscathed. Half-martial ancestor Qingzhe's expression changed slightly. He could naturally sense the terrifying sharpness of the green lotus sword. Before it arrived, his essence spirit already felt a vague pain. Mystic Firmament slash. Half-martial ancestor Qingzhe did not dare to be careless and hurriedly condensed his spirit consciousness to release an essence spirit secret skill to defend against it. Lunatic. Half-martial ancestor Qian cursed, this desolate marshal is truly a lunatic. Usually, essence spirit secret skills were not used casually at their cultivation realm. Fights between essence spirits were the most dangerous. Once their essence spirits suffered any damage, they might never be able to advance to the Mahayana realm in their lifetime. There was an insurmountable chasm between the conjoint body and Mahayana realm. Even with the cultivation realm of a half-martial ancestor as a buffer, it was still extremely difficult for one to truly advance to the Mahayana realm. Typically, after cultivating to the half-martial ancestor realm, they would enter seclusion in the sect and work hard to comprehend heaven and earth, divine powers, and attempt to break through to the Mahayana realm. Therefore, there were very few traces of half-martial ancestors in the cultivation world. If Su Zimo had not appeared out of nowhere and was invincible against his peers such that conjoint body mighty figures could not do anything to him, these half-martial ancestors would not have appeared. To think that Su Zimo would have used an Essence Spirit secret skill at this point of the battle. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and the others cursed angrily. However, they could not stand by idly and hurriedly condensed their spirit consciousnesses to release their Essence Spirit secret skills. Essence Spirit secret skills burst forth one after another and attacked Su Zimo. In a flash, Su Zimo charged towards half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. At the same time, he conjured a secret skill once more and tapped his glabella to withdraw a spirit consciousness whip that shone with electric arcs. Spirit Vanquishing Whip. Piak. Su Zimo swung the whip and whipped an Essence Spirit secret skill, causing it to dissipate on the spot into emptiness. Ugh. The expression of the half-martial ancestor of Enigma Palace changed as he grunted. His Essence Spirit endured quite a shock in his consciousness. The Thunder Emperor's Essence Spirit secret skill. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng had a grim expression and recognized it quickly. Piak, piak, piak. Su Zimo swung the Spirit Vanquishing Whip and it only dispersed after crushing 4 Essence Spirit secret skills. He had just entered the conjoint body realm and it was already his limit to release such an attack with the Thunder Emperor's secret skill. There were 4 other Essence Spirit secret skills from the half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace. Normally it should be enough to kill Su Zimo. However, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and the others glared at Su Zimo nervously. Unless they saw Su Zimo die with their own eyes, they did not know what would happen next. True enough. The moment Su Zimo's Spirit Vanquishing Whip shattered, a blinding golden light burst forth from his glabella and formed a mysterious symbol in midair. That single word possessed an incomparably divine power that seemed like it could suppress and cleanse all evil. It was another Essence Spirit secret skill, the Rulai Dharmic Seal. The symbol collided with the Essence Spirit secret skills of the 4 Enigma Palace half-martial ancestors. It was silent but emanated an extremely terrifying spirit consciousness fluctuation that spread in all directions like ripples. The void distorted as though it wanted to tear everything apart. The remaining 8 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace retreated with wary expressions. However, Su Zimo relied on the Creation Lotus platform to protect his Essence Spirit and passed through the ripples, arriving before half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. At the same time, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's mystic firmament collided with the Green Lotus sword as well. The collision of the 2 powers seemed to have frozen the world. There was a momentary pause. The mystic firmament dissipated. The Green Lotus sword scattered down as well, turning into dark green lotus seeds that returned to Su Zimo's consciousness. After dissipating, the green lotus seeds could recover their vitality after returning to the Creation Lotus platform to be nourished for a short period of time. However, the Essence Spirit of half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe received an immense shock in this Essence Spirit fight. In fact, a faint scar appeared on his Essence Spirit. His Essence Spirit was injured. Although the wounds on the Essence Spirit were thin, it was extremely difficult to recover and there was a high chance it would require years of recuperation. If he could not recover completely, he would be stuck at the half-martial ancestor realm forever and would never be able to advance to the ancestor realm. Desolate Martial. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe was enraged and raised the Dharmic breaking bow in his hands, wanting to shoot a 3rd arrow. Right then, his vision blurred and a figure descended before him. The figure attacked right away and released an extremely tragic aura. You. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe had not expected Su Zimo to close in after the Essence Spirit fight. He did not even have time to release his Dharmic breaking bow. That was also a weakness of the Dharmic bow. If he was closed in, the ancient unique treasure would become a burden. Chapter 1454, Bow Snatch Invincible. Chapter 1454, Bow Snatch Invincible. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai channeled his blood chi and punched in reverse towards Su Zimo's fist as well. Bang! The two fists collided. In fact, both he and Su Zimo could hear the jarring sound of their bones grinding against flesh. It was an even split. A tremendous recoil burst forth. A look of mockery flashed through half-martial ancestor Qingzai's eyes. Using the recoil, he retreated rapidly, wanting to distance himself from Su Zimo. All of a sudden, his expression changed. After the two fists collided, Su Zimo's fist suddenly turned into a palm and became soft. He went from extreme toughness to extreme gentleness without any sluggishness. The soft palm landed on half-martial ancestor Qingzai's fist and coiled and trembled. An extremely terrifying power burst forth. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai could clearly sense that his arm was being torn apart by a distortion and felt a piercing pain. Ah! He shrieked. The flesh on his arm exploded and his entire arm turned into a blood mist. Su Zimo strode forward and extended both hands. In a flash, he grabbed the two arms of half-martial ancestor Qingzai and thrust his knees forward like a sprinting stallion, charging forward viciously. Although the Green Lotus true body was not as strong as the Dragon Phoenix body, the killing techniques of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness were still unusually terrifying when used. Snap! Half-martial ancestor Qingzai's chest caved in deeply. Under the impact of the two different powers, his arms were torn off by Su Zimo and blood gushed out in an extremely tragic manner. Ah! Half-martial ancestor Qingzai cried out in pain once more with a pale expression. His body that lost his arms trembled slightly in midair, almost convulsing. This sudden change stunned many experts present. The moment half-martial ancestor Qingzai appeared, he suppressed the situation in a domineering manner and almost shot Su Zimo to death. Nobody expected the tides to reverse in the blink of an eye. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai was closed in by Su Zimo and was nearly killed. Despite being severely injured, half-martial ancestor Qingzai could still stand in midair and channel his Dharmic powers fanatically. His two arms regrew at a speed visible to the naked eye. The broken bones in his chest were healing rapidly as well. The sound of a tsunami echoed from within the body of half-martial ancestor Qingzai. Tsunami blood. Combat strength was definitely not the most important factor for someone to oversee Enigma Palace and become its lord. That was because the palace lord had to manage a massive sect and deal with many complicated matters. It would definitely take a lot of energy for him to manage the disciples. It was the same for the major sects and factions. However, anyone who could become the palace lord of Enigma Palace was definitely not someone easy to deal with. Although he was severely injured, half-martial ancestor Qingzai was able to calm down rapidly and heal his body with his powerful bloodline. It was clear how strong his mind was. Unfortunately, the situation was no longer in his control. Initially, it was nothing much for half-martial ancestor Qingzai's arms to be snapped. However, his severed arm was gripping the ancient unique treasure, the Dharmic breaking bow. Right now, the Dharmic breaking bow was in Su Zimo's hands. You shot me once. Su Zimo looked at half-martial ancestor Qingzai and said coldly, I'll return you the shot. Before his sentence was finished, Su Zimo pulled the Dharmic breaking bow and a mysterious feeling appeared. Dharmic powers gathered wildly at his fingertips. In the blink of an eye, a Dharmic power arrow appeared. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai's expression changed starkly. Swoosh. His bow was like a full moon and the arrows were like shooting stars. The Dharmic power arrow tore through the air at an astonishing speed and tore through the void, absorbing all the Dharmic powers in the surroundings. The speed of the arrow increased exponentially and was almost upon him. He could not use Dharmic arts to defend against the Dharmic breaking bow's arrow. Otherwise, the power of the Dharmic breaking bow would only increase tremendously. Half-martial ancestor Qingzai's reaction was extremely fast. A gigantic ancient mirror floated out from his glabella and grew rapidly, blocking in front of him. Boom. The Dharmic power arrow collided with the ancient mirror and let out a loud bang. Crack, crack, crack. The ancient mirror shattered instantly. Countless shards flew back and entered half-martial ancestor Qingzai's body, almost riddling him with holes as blood gushed out. This time round, half-martial ancestor Qingzai could no longer hold on and fell from midair. His face was pale and his eyes were dim. The cultivators were shocked. When they saw that, the cultivators of Enigma Palace were in an uproar. Some of the low-level cultivators of Enigma Palace could not leave the palace due to their cultivation realms and could only watch the battle from within. However, the scene of their palace lord shot down by a single arrow from Desolate Marshal had a way too huge impact on them. A mighty figure of Enigma Palace hurriedly moved and helped half-martial Ancestor Qingze up from midair. Attack! Right then, Heavenly Secrets, who was fighting against the Asura, suddenly shouted, "The Dharmic breaking bow requires a lapse and you can't shoot consecutively." Half-martial Ancestor Chen Tian and the others reacted and attacked. Bang! 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 Powerful Dharmic arts descended once more. That's good as well. I'll let you guys have a taste of the power of this Dharmic breaking bow. Su Zimo said coldly. Under countless gazes, he pulled the bowstring once more and Dharmic powers gathered rapidly as another Dharmic power arrow appeared. Impossible. Even half-martial Ancestor Qingze exclaimed when he saw that. The Dharmic breaking bow had just fired an arrow. However, the second arrow was condensed in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! The Dharmic power arrow tore through the air and pierced the Dharmic art of a half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace instantly. The Dharmic art dissipated on the spot and all the Dharmic powers were absorbed by the Dharmic power arrow. It was even faster and more ferocious. The Dharmic power arrow pierced the chest of the half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace, burst forth from his body. The terrifying power did not only destroy the life force in the body of the half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace, it even charged towards his consciousness. The half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace reacted extremely quickly and escaped with his essence spirit right away. Su Zimo ignored that person and turned around. With a lightning gaze, he faced another half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace and drew the Dharmic breaking bow once more. In the blink of an eye, a third Dharmic power arrow was formed. How could this be? That's impossible. Psst. Everyone from Enigma Palace gasped in shock as a look of panic finally flashed across their faces. In Su Zimo's hands, that ancient unique treasure could be drawn repeatedly to condense Dharmic power arrows. This meant that their Dharmic arts were completely vulnerable in front of Su Zimo. Swoosh! A third arrow tore through the air and two Dharmic arts dissipated on the spot. An arrow could break all Dharmic arts. Poof! Another half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace was pierced by the Dharmic power arrow. With a dark expression, he fell from midair and an essence spirit escaped from the top of his head. Boom! Before his body even landed on the ground, it could not withstand the power contained in the Dharmic power arrow and exploded with his flesh flying everywhere. Thankfully, this person noticed that the situation was bad and escaped first. Otherwise, his body and spirit would have been destroyed together. Who else is there? Su Zimo stood in midair and roared. Under the fearful gazes of everyone from Enigma Palace, he drew his Dharmic breaking bow once more and condensed a fourth Dharmic power arrow. Swoosh! He released his hand and the arrow tore through the air. Another half-martial Ancestor of Enigma Palace was shot down. He was invincible. That was the only thought in the minds of everyone from Enigma Palace. Chapter 1455, Divine Dragon. Chapter 1455, Divine Dragon. On the other side, the fight between Heavenly Secrets and Yan Beichen had already reached its climax. Every single attack was lethal and both wanted to take the other's life. Yan Beichen's injuries were even more serious. However, there was no emotion on his face or in his eyes, as though he could not feel any pain at all. His heart was already filled with hatred. He only wanted Heavenly Secrets to die. He wanted Heavenly Secrets to pay with his life. Heavenly Secrets was in a bitter battle and the smile on his face had vanished completely. In such a massive battle, all his scheming was useless. Yan Beichen did not care about his life at all and he fought with his life on the line with every attack. He was not afraid of death. In fact, in his heart, death was a form of relief for him as long as he could kill Heavenly Secrets. However, Heavenly Secrets did not wish to die. Given that psychological disparity, Heavenly Secrets was suppressed by Yan Beichen once more. On the other side, Su Zimo had complete control of the situation with the Dharmic breaking bow. A strange blood glint flashed through Heavenly Secrets' eyes from time to time and nobody noticed it. He could no longer control himself and wanted to activate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. If he summoned the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, his combat strength would recover rapidly and he would definitely be able to kill Yan Beichen here. However, if he were to use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he would not be able to hide his identity. Even in the hands of a half-martial ancestor, it would take a while before a second arrow could be released from the unique treasure, the Dharmic Breaking Bow. The reason why Su Zimo could continuously draw the Dharmic Breaking Bow and condense Dharmic power arrows was because of the Creation Lotus platform in his consciousness. After the Creation Green Lotus grew to grade 7, it gave birth to extremely mysterious abilities. The Creation Lotus platform presided over his consciousness, and the 63 lotus holes spewed rays of light continuously, nourishing the black-haired essence spirit. As long as his black-haired essence spirit was strong enough, he could release Dharmic arts continuously. This was the reason why Su Zimo could release more than 30 powerful Dharmic arts in one go previously. Although the Dharmic Breaking Bow was an ancient unique treasure, the arrow that he condensed was a form of Dharmic art. With the help of the Grade 7 Creation Lotus platform, the power of the Dharmic Breaking Bow was pushed to its limits in Su Zimo's hands. There were 5 more half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace with combat strength present. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian, half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove, and the others were among them. However, the 5 half-martial ancestors did not dare to release any Dharmic arts. An arrow from the Dharmic Breaking Bow could break all Dharmic arts. Any Dharmic art would not be able to withstand a single blow from the Dharmic Breaking Bow and would even turn into the power of the bow to injure themselves. Let's fight him in close combat. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian hollered and exchanged glances with half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove. In a flash, he released an extremely strange movement technique and his figure flickered indeterminately. As long as he could get close, the Dharmic Breaking Bow posed no threat. If one wanted to shoot an arrow, they would have to use both arms. Once a person was closed in, the Dharmic Breaking Bow would definitely become a burden. The movement technique they were releasing right now was extremely particular as well. It was an inheritance secret skill of Enigma Palace, the Mystic Firmament Steps. Its powerful and mysterious aspect was second only to the Exquisite Steps. Back in the Dao Inheritance Ground, Dean hunted Lin Xuanji for a long time but could not do anything to the latter. The Mystic Firmament Steps was the reason why. The Mystic Firmament Steps were random and did not have a fixed set of steps, making it impossible for opponents to determine the direction of the steps, and their movement techniques were unpredictable. The 5 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace used the Mystic Firmament Steps and charged towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not put away the Dharmic Breaking Bow. Instead, he closed his eyes and captured the location of the 5 half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace with his unfathomable spirit perception. Although the footsteps of the 5 half-martial ancestors were unpredictable, the killing intent they exuded never changed. Suddenly, without even opening his eyes, Su Zimo drew his Dharmic Breaking Bow and released the 5th Dharmic Power Arrow without hesitation. Swoosh! The Dharmic Power Arrow tore through the air. That arrow was shot towards half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove was shocked. The arrow was fired at the same time as his footsteps. By the time he wanted to change directions, it was already too late. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove hurriedly twisted the horsetail whip in his hands and whipped the Dharmic Power Arrow. Bang! There was a loud bang. The silver threads on half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove's horsetail whip exploded instantly. The power of the arrow did not diminish and it pierced through the silver threads of the horsetail whip, piercing towards the chest of half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove. In his fluster, half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove raised his arms. Both arms were ruptured on the spot and flesh splattered everywhere. Arg! Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove cried in pain and retreated. Before half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and the other 3 could close into Su Zimo, their expressions turned extremely terrible and they froze on the spot. Su Zimo turned around and fired another arrow. The 6th arrow. By controlling his Dharmic weapon, half-martial ancestor Chen Tian barely managed to block the arrow. Even then he spat out a huge mouthful of blood with a dispirited expression. Retreat. There was no way half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the remaining 2 half-martial ancestors dared to advance as they retreated one after another. We can't win him. We can't win him at all. Half-martial ancestor Li Heng shouted as he retreated. The palace lord of Enigma Palace, half-martial ancestor Qingzhe, had consumed a lot of elixirs. With the support of a mighty figure of Enigma Palace, he rested for a while and had already recovered slightly. When he saw the scene on the battlefield, the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace looked a little angry, helpless and dejected. No matter the outcome of this battle, Enigma Palace's reputation and status would be far inferior compared to before. Enigma Palace had a long history and had never been challenged by any sect or faction since the ancient era. Who would have thought that they would be cornered to this extent by 4 conjoint body mighty figures that came knocking? In truth, it was not Enigma Palace's fault. Right now, the 4 of them could be considered as the 4 strongest monster incarnates of the conjoint body realm. Be it Ming Zhen, Demoness Ji or the Asura Yen Beichen, all of them were existences that could overwhelm anyone of the same level. Furthermore, the exquisite killing formation that could kill patriarchs outside Enigma Palace was broken by Demoness Ji, and that was the reason why Enigma Palace was in such a passive position. Enigma Palace was not the only one. Even for other super sects, if the patriarch did not make a move, the 4 of them would be able to kill their way through any of them with their combat strength. Palace Lord, send the order. The mighty figure of Enigma Palace said in a deep voice, the sect will suffer immense losses if this continues. That's right. Half-Marshal Ancestor Qing Zhe nodded as well and lamented, desolate Marshal's momentum has been established. Without a patriarch, there's no one who can suppress him anymore. Elder Qing Zhe took a deep breath of air and turned around. Bowing deeply in the direction of Enigma Palace, he said in a deep voice, Divine Dragon, please attack and suppress the enemy. There was a long silence. Suddenly, a deafening bang sounded around Enigma Palace. Instantly the mountains collapsed and the earth shattered. Under countless gazes, the terrain around Enigma Palace rose slowly and a terrifying aura spread out. A divine dragon that was thousands of feet long revealed its true body and coiled around Enigma Palace before spiraling up. Its gigantic dragon eyes resembled 2 ancient stars. The scales on its body were larger than the city gates and shone with a cold glint. Its towering dragon head swayed slightly and dust fell endlessly. Opening its mouth slightly, it spat out a dragon breath and bared its menacing fangs. Chapter 1456, Ancestor Realm. Chapter 1456, Ancestor Realm. The aura of that divine dragon was way too strong. Even from Long Ran and the others, Su Zimo did not feel such pressure. Of course, the main reason was because Long Ran had not transformed into his dragon true body in front of Su Zimo before. However, the divine dragon before him was in its complete dragon form. Su Zimo could not tell the cultivation of the divine dragon. However, he guessed that the divine dragon was at least at the Ancestor realm. He did not know how long the divine dragon had lived. 50,000 years. 100,000 years. Perhaps it was even longer. The dragon race had a long lifespan that far exceeded the human race. It was only normal for an Ancestor realm divine dragon to live for hundreds of thousands of years. The divine dragon exuded an ancient aura and had an extremely long beard. When it hung down from its chin, it resembled a galactic river that looked a little old. However, the moment this old dragon appeared, the entire world went silent. The old dragon's body that was thousands of feet tall broke free from the mud and spiraled upwards, watching the cultivators in front of Enigma Palace with a burning gaze. The gaze seemed like it was looking at a group of ants. Or rather, if this old dragon were to take a breath of air, all the cultivators in front of Enigma Palace might turn into ashes. Everything went silent. Even the Asura Yen Beichen had no choice but to stop under the pressure of the old dragon. His body trembled slightly as he resisted the immense might of the old dragon. Who would have thought that there was an Ancestor realm divine dragon sleeping around Enigma Palace? It was Enigma Palace's mystical guardian beast. This was the foundation of Enigma Palace. The exquisite killing formation was only the first line of defense. The second line of defense was this old dragon at the Ancestor realm. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled his encounter with Lin Xuanji in the Dragon Bone Valley of the North region. Now that he thought about it, it was not a coincidence that Lin Xuanji came to the Dragon Bone Valley. One of Su Zimo's true bodies was among the dragon race. He knew the temperament of the dragon race the best. The dragon race was prideful. He did not know what sort of an incredible figure Enigma Palace produced in the past to be able to make an Ancestor realm divine dragon guard this place wholeheartedly. If the Dragon Phoenix true body was here, the current situation would not be a big deal. Even if this old dragon belonged to Enigma Palace, it was a dragon after all and would not harm the taboo dragon phoenix no matter what. However, it was different for the Green Lotus true body. In the eyes of the old dragon at the Ancestor realm, the Green Lotus true body was no different from other ants. Why did you wake me up? The old dragon's voice sounded and spread to every corner of the heaven-expanding mountain range, shocking everyone with its endless might. Senior Divine Dragon, our sect has encountered a great enemy. Please kill the 4 of them. Half-Martial Ancestor Qingze was extremely respectful and polite to the Divine Dragon as well. After bowing he said in a deep voice, "Humph." The old dragon harumphed coldly and the entire world shuddered. Enigma Palace is truly getting worse. To think that you would be rendered completely helpless by 4 conjoint body realm brats that came knocking. As the old dragon spoke, it extended its dragon claws and grabbed towards Su Zimo's group of 4. The dragon claw covered the skies and its sharp claws were aimed at the heads of Su Zimo's group of 4 without any mistake. The most frightening thing was that Su Zimo's group of 4 could not move at all under the envelopment of the dragon claw, as though they were restrained by an invisible force. This old dragon was way too strong. At his age, he had witnessed countless changes and bloodshed in Tianhuang mainland. Killing Su Zimo's group of 4 was as simple as crushing 4 ants. In midair, Yan Beichen's eyes were filled with endless hatred. He was indignant. A smile reappeared on Heavenly Secrets' face. The more furious Yan Beichen was, the more amused he was. "Asura, you've lost." Heavenly Secrets smiled gently and made a beheading gesture. Heavenly Secrets. Yan Beichen had an enraged expression and his body trembled. The hatred fiend's saber buzzed and trembled, but he could not break free from the shackles on his body. Suddenly, the dragon claw paused in midair and did not descend. A look of confusion flashed through the old dragon's eyes as he frowned slightly and hesitated. Thereafter, under the gazes of half-martial Ancestor Qingze and the others, the old dragon retracted its dragon claw slowly. The shackles on Su Zimo's group of 4 gradually dispersed as well. Su Zimo muttered internally as well. He did not know what happened in that short period of time either to cause this old dragon to change its mind. "Divine Dragon, what's wrong?" Half-Martial Ancestor Qingze said hurriedly. The 4 of them barged into Enigma Palace and shattered the mountain gate steel, killing a few mighty figures of Enigma Palace and severely injuring many half-martial ancestors. "Divine Dragon, please kill the 4 of them. I won't be interfering in this matter anymore." The old dragon said inexplicably and returned to the ground. It closed its dragon eyes and lay dormant without moving. "Divine Dragon, how can you do that?" Half-Martial Ancestor Qingze was anxious and grumbled. Without even opening its eyes, the old dragon said indifferently, "If you continue to talk to me, I'll devour you first." Half-Martial Ancestor Qingze was shocked. Although this old dragon was Enigma Palace's mystic guardian divine beast, it was not restricted by the sect rules. If he was truly devoured alive, there was nothing he could do. Even the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace could not understand what was going on, let alone the others. Only Heavenly Secrets frowned slightly in deep thought. The old dragon sprawled on the ground and suddenly shook its head. 2 long streams of air spewed from its nostrils and dust billowed. Nobody noticed that 3 sleazy figures were hiding in the hair on the old dragon's neck and were almost flung off. The 3 figures were not even as thick as the old dragon's beard and were hidden among them without anyone noticing. The 3 of them were Lin Xuanji, Little Fatty and Shi Jian, who had escaped from underground. "Thank you, Senior Divine Dragon," Lin Xuanji whispered. The old dragon harumphed as a response. The reason why the old dragon stopped in time earlier on was because of Lin Xuanji's persuasion. There were less than 10 cultivators in Enigma Palace who knew this old dragon, and Lin Xuanji was one of them. "Lin Xuanji, you're quite something." Little Fatty hid in the old dragon's beard and was almost scared out of his wits. Now that he snapped out of his stupor, he could not help but say, "Get this divine dragon to attack and kill that bullshit Heavenly Secrets." This Heavenly Secrets is always smiling. I can tell that he's not a good person. "Kill your head." Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. Senior Divine Dragon is already giving me face by not interfering. How can he attack someone from Enigma Palace? It's fine if it's just Heavenly Secrets. I suspect that there are others involved. Lin Xuanji's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove and half-martial ancestor Chen Tian as he murmured. I've got to get the old man back given the situation. Otherwise, Brother Su and the others are going to die here. He muttered again. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.